Now, we all know that SpongeBob literally doesn't make any sense.
Holy shrimp!
Yeah, logic is the last thing that I think of when I think of SpongeBob. But what if there was real-world logic in SpongeBob? What if he could actually die from all the insane things that he's done? Today, we're going over all the times that SpongeBob should have died. Starting in the episode, Shanghaired. Now, seeing a flying ghost ship would send anyone running, but for SpongeBob, it was just another Tuesday. He climbed aboard without even a second thought, and from the very start, death was basically waiting for him. He climbs onto the ship willingly, straight into the arms of a ghost who immediately burns Squidward alive. SpongeBob only realizes it's dangerous once his best friend is screaming, but it doesn't stop there. The Dutchman threatens to eat them, and their escape plan nearly kills them in the perfume department. That hallway alone should have suffocated them. Yet somehow, SpongeBob survives, only to be caught again. His final hope is 3 wishes that he gets granted, and the first 2 go horribly wrong.
Wishes? I wish we had known that earlier.
You got 2 wishes left. I wish Squidward were here to see this. Squidward!
And when it's SpongeBob's turn, he makes a smart choice, only for the Dutchman to twist and toss them into a blender. How he lived through any of that is a mystery, but getting kidnapped by the Flying Dutchman should have been a guaranteed death sentence. But this wasn't the only time SpongeBob's brains, or lack of, nearly killed him. Let's talk about the next time he almost died, this time from having an exposed brain. In the episode Scaredy Pants, SpongeBob's brain has made so many cameos that it should have killed him over 1,000,000 times.
Come on now, SpongeBob. You need to pull yourself together.
We were the first kids on the block to get whirly brains.
But perhaps the one that should have made him drop dead is in the episode Scaredy Pants. This one starts off fairly innocent. On the evening of Halloween, SpongeBob gets bullied as the crew gets to know that he's easily scared, leading him to earning the name SpongeBob Scaredy Pants. He asks Patrick for help, and they try out a bunch of tricks, but none really make anyone scared. Fed up, SpongeBob decides to use one last trick that he's had up his sleeve. He shows up at a Halloween party at the Krusty Krab, and though people were initially scared, they started laughing as soon as they realized that it was SpongeBob. But things change when the Flying Dutchman appears and get offended at SpongeBob's costume.
You scary!
I don't know about you, but I don't know a lot of people who can walk around with that much of their insides exposed. He was lucky he had the ability to grow his skin back. Otherwise, he definitely should have died at the party. But it's not just SpongeBob's brain. His most favorite place in the world is constantly out to get him. Let's talk about the one time he almost died from workplace hazards. In the episode Krusty Krab training video, this episode fulfills many people's dreams to work alongside SpongeBob, but the training video casually reveals the darker sides of the Krusty Krab. The episode starts off with the Krusty Krab's backstory. It ironically began with Krabs committing fraud as a little kid. It informs us that the Krusty Krab used to be a nursing home until it got renovated into the restaurant it is today. Then it guides us through the technological advancements that are working to keep the business running smoothly. Basically, what you'd expect to find in the most ordinary restaurants. Except, Krabs has some special names for them.
This here is an advanced patty control mechanism. Here you can see our automated money handling system.
But the highlight comes when the actual training part of the episode starts. The training starts with personal hygiene, and SpongeBob isn't just told to clean his hands. He's not allowed to stop scrubbing until his hands no longer exist. On top of this, he's made to cut off any spots on his face with a pair of scissors. Then comes cleaning his workstation, and he's seen vacuuming on top of the stove. The odds of a fire hazard there is so great that SpongeBob has a better chance of surviving out of water. Everyone knows how Mr. Krabs is really cheap, but he only pays SpongeBob a penny a month. If workplace hazards don't kill him, starvation certainly should have. And that's not taking into consideration all of Plankton's evil schemes for the Krabby Patty secret formula. It's a miracle that he's able to go to work every day and come back alive. And the fact that he's even able to get enough food to survive. Speaking of eating enough, there was once a time when he swallowed an entire bomb. Yeah, we're talking about the episode Dying for Pie. It's well known that Squidward hates SpongeBob, but this episode takes that idea to a whole new level. It starts off with Squidward dreading the Employee Brotherhood Day because, well, he hates SpongeBob. But the yellow sponge is the complete opposite, being excited to give Squidward his gift. When gifts are exchanged, Squidward is empty-handed, while SpongeBob presents him with a sweater made of his own eyelashes. Now, it's a miracle how SpongeBob got that many lashes, but Squidward's disgusted reaction makes him really upset. So upset that he actually makes a sweater from his own tears. In response to this, Squidward makes it clear that he just wants to get a cheap gift for SpongeBob. Instead of taking time to make one, he encounters a group of pirates who tell them they are making bombs that look like pies. And when the pirates realize that Squidward will buy the pies from them if they were normal, they change the deal. Squidward naively buys the pies, one for Mr. Krabs and one for SpongeBob. But the pies never stopped being bombs. And when Mr. Krabs broke off a piece, it exploded. But by the time they realized this, it was too late for SpongeBob, who supposedly ate it. Filled with guilt, Squidward finally acts like a good friend to SpongeBob. He takes him around, even doing dangerous acts to check everything off SpongeBob's bucket list. In the end, he takes him to see the sunset as the final item on the list, creating a wall between them to protect himself. Squidward tears up as SpongeBob says that he would be happy to die now. Luckily for him, his kindness saved him from an explosion from within. He wanted to share the pie, and hence never ate it. But even then, the bomb exploded very close to him. How he survived here is a mystery. But this isn't the only time that Squidward almost killed SpongeBob. And this next one was nearly death by exhaustion. In the episode, Can You Spare a Dime? What started as a really kind gesture turned Squidward into a SpongeBob abuser. The episode begins with Squidward quitting his job after being accused of stealing Mr. Krabs' first dime. He didn't want to change his mind because he had big ambitions, so SpongeBob believes him after extending a kind hand if he ever needed one. When SpongeBob meets him again, Squidward had been living in a cardboard box. Feeling bad for him, SpongeBob lets him stay at his house until he can find a new job, pampering him with breakfast in bed and massages. But this would eventually spell disaster for SpongeBob. Squidward would not allow him to sleep, constantly interrupting him for stupid reasons. Still, he remains kind, even giving Gary excuses for Squidward's behavior. Months pass by, and Squidward is obviously having no intentions to stop his royal treatment from SpongeBob, not looking for new employment or trying to be a better version of himself. He becomes completely dependent on him. SpongeBob becomes a servant to Squidward, who gets as much as he can get from him. He goes as far as to clearly ignore all the hints to get a job from SpongeBob, even lying and saying that he's allergic to the job listing section of the newspaper. Eventually, a fed-up SpongeBob pushes that bed that Squidward's lying on, through the upstairs wall and all the way to the Krusty Krab. He demands that Krabs give Squidward his job back, while throwing as many dimes at Krabs as possible. Finally, at the end of his threat, SpongeBob snaps in extreme rage and fury, grabs Mr. Krabs by the throat, and lashes out at him for his cheapness. Just how much SpongeBob has been pushed to his limits is clear when the usual cheery sponge downright threatens to kill Krabs. He shakes Krabs violently, which is what saved the day. The first dime falls out of Krabs' pants with a large coin-shaped rock, revealing that it was in his pocket the whole time. The sleep deprivation, the mental torture, and the physical exhaustion would have killed any normal person, but SpongeBob only survives because he's the main character of the show. But this isn't the only time someone worked SpongeBob to the bone, because in this next one, he almost experienced death by sleep deprivation in the episode Fear of a Krabby Patty. This was one of the most dangerous plans that Plankton ever had, because SpongeBob could have easily died in this episode. It begins with Krabs adjusting the restaurant's business hours until he sees what Plankton is up to. The Chum Bucket announced that it will be open 23 hours a day, and with how competitive Krabs is, he raced to come out on top. Krabs announced that the Krusty Krab is now a 24/7 working restaurant, and he didn't hire anyone anyone knew, of course. So the job immediately fell to SpongeBob and Squidward, who were now required to stay up through the night for working. All is going according to Plankton's plan, who wanted to get the formula out of an exhausted SpongeBob. After 10 days of nonstop service, somehow SpongeBob keeps working. And to give you an idea, the average person cannot be trusted with a stove just 3 days after no sleep. But SpongeBob is not only near a stove, he kept flipping Krabby Patties for over 240 hours. Because that didn't go according to plan, Plankton goes a step further by doing something much worse.
Krusty Krab, the restaurant that never closes. You'd like to place an order? 10,000 Krabby Patties.
Krabs, without a second thought, gives the order to him with no breaks.
1,322.
Day 23. Day
8,659.
Wait, what's going on?
After 43 days, SpongeBob begins to crack, cooking the Krabby Patties wrong. He gets pushed so much that the exhaustion makes him develop a fear of Krabby Patties themselves. After all of this, Plankton finally tries to take advantage of him, and a few of his tricks do not work.
Now, let's unload all that harmful information in your little yellow head.
As a last-ditch effort, he tries hypnosis, but that just ends up curing SpongeBob's fear, as all he needed was some sleep. 43 days of no sleep and constant working should have made SpongeBob fall into his beloved stove and cook like a Krabby Patty. This wasn't a one-time thing either. In the episode Graveyard Shift, Krabs does a similar thing, but in that episode, Squidward scares SpongeBob into believing that a hash-slinging slasher monster will get him. The only good thing is that he's awake for only one night, and the horror story wasn't true, but it clearly shows that Krabs will take advantage of him whenever he can. Well, this was him being a good worker. Being a driver doesn't seem to help him either. So now, let's talk about the time he almost died from a car accident. In the episode Bumper to Bumper, it's no secret that SpongeBob is a bad driver. The guy has literally taken the test over 1.2 million times.
Help! Lunatic driver!
SpongeBob, give me that wheel.
I got it.
But his deadliest one was in the Bumper to Bumper episode from season 9. Mrs. Puff, who has been good all day until then, immediately breaks down when she sees SpongeBob.
Mrs. Puff.
And right from the get-go, it's easy to see why. SpongeBob first reverses the car, then does multiple 360-degree spins to fix his mistake, until his steering wheel breaks. Once that happened, SpongeBob has totally lost control of the car, leading him to crash through multiple obstacles. He managed to knot the road he was driving on, and even set the whole boat on fire. To top it all off, he crashed right into someone's house, leading Mrs. Puff to fail him again. But as if 6 brushes with death weren't enough, Mrs. Puff tries to keep faith in him and attempts to teach him again. This time, she took him to a real road, which went just as badly.
This isn't just any road. It's a 10-lane intertidal seaway.
Somehow, even 1.2 million times wasn't enough to pass his test. And at the end of the episode, the policeman tore up his license. So even after all that effort, poor Spongy never got what he tried so hard for. But this isn't the only time that SpongeBob almost died because of boating school. Next, we have to talk about what happened in the episode Ditchin'. Everyone is a fan of something or the other, but in this episode, SpongeBob nearly loses his life for being a fanboy. After watching an episodes of The Adventures of Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy, SpongeBob finds that there's a book signing from his favorite superheroes. But this makes him really upset, because he has to go to boating school that day. Not wanting to damage his attendance record, he decides to ditch boating school while pretending to go to the bathroom. The plan worked out nicely, and by the next day, he got to the book signing. But when he saw that Dale, who was an ex-convict, got arrested, things started to break apart. A fish told him that Dale became a criminal after ditching class, making SpongeBob guilty. After that, he tries to go bat. This was his biggest mistake. In his hurry to go bat, he drowns in a pit of tar and nearly dies. He only gets out because of his determination to return the bathroom key to Mrs. Puff. But this could have gone either way, and he would have died by drowning. But this isn't the only time that SpongeBob's explorations nearly killed him either. In Rock Bottom, no one could have predicted that taking the wrong bus could have led to SpongeBob's death. But thanks to his plot armor, we see him surviving in some of the most dangerous habitats. The episode begins with SpongeBob and Patrick accidentally taking the wrong bus to Rock Bottom. Its residents are deep sea creatures who are not known for being merciful. They have glowing eyes, razor-sharp teeth, and even their voices are enough to send shivers down everyone's spines. The environment that surrounded these people wasn't welcoming either. It was in complete darkness, with bizarre structures and the perfect atmosphere to kill. Even the vending machines try to kill SpongeBob. He spends the whole episode alone, hungry and determined, while creatures that could have easily killed him are sneaking in the shadows. If this happened in real life, a sponge as small as him would have been swallowed in a matter of minutes. Luckily, SpongeBob survives a whole night and only gets out because of the friendly anglerfish, who helps him back to Bikini Bottom. But now, let's talk about the next near-death experience. In the episode, Frankendoodle. In the episode, SpongeBob and Patrick find a harmless pencil dropped by a French artist. They play around with it, drawing whatever shapes they can think of. But it turns out there was a surprise waiting for them.
SpongeBob, your drawing's coming to life!
This gave SpongeBob an idea to prank Squidward. He draws himself, hoping that it would be a joke and good fun. The drawing became what SpongeBob called Doodle Bob, but things quickly started to go horribly wrong. It turns out to be a fight for survival, with Doodle Bob beating the pair. He only had one mission: to erase the original version of SpongeBob from existence. SpongeBob thought that this would be over when he erased his doppelganger with the eraser on the pencil, but he couldn't be further from the truth, as he didn't do the job right. Doodle Bob redraws himself and comes after SpongeBob again. The fight only ends when SpongeBob traps Doodle Bob on a piece of paper, but that wasn't the end of Doodle Bob. He appears again in the Doodle dimension, only this time it was SpongeBob and Patrick who were in Doodle Bob's territory. He appears to have upgraded his skills, having the ability to create entire whole armies now, and even turn other drawings evil. The pair only get away after they tie balloons to Doodle Bob's army. Doppelgangers never seem to leave SpongeBob alone, as this next one almost causes his death in the episode The Cave-Dwelling Sponge. If the Flying Dutchman didn't haunt him, SpongeBob's lookalike from the prehistoric times certainly did. The episode starts really innocently, with a walk in nature, but Patrick's stupidity soon got his tongue on ice. Melting the ice got Patrick free, but it also awakened a caveman version of SpongeBob. Unaware that the new sponge was hiding in his backpack, the pair returned home, but the chaos quickly starts spreading. The cave sponge, now called Spongy Sponge, follows SpongeBob around, but his intentions were not as pure, as he causes massive property damage and even critically damages Squidward. Poor SpongeBob is blamed, haunted, and jailed for his crimes that he didn't commit. What's most terrifying in this episode is how easily people turn on the sponge they have known for years at this point. Even when Squidward saw Spongy Sponge, he couldn't tell the difference. This leads to the ancient sponge directly attacking customers. Had the truth not come out, SpongeBob would have easily gotten the death sentence for all the crimes that Spongy Sponge did. But while Patrick's stupidity got SpongeBob in this situation, it was his clumsiness that got him in another brush with death, this time almost dying from an infection in the episode The Splinter. The episode starts with SpongeBob accidentally throwing his spatula into the ceiling. When he tries to get it back, he falls and nearly gets critically injured from the surrounding sharp objects. His spatula saves him, but even that couldn't prevent SpongeBob's landing. He slips on some tartar sauce, causing him to drag his finger along the wooden floors, giving him a splinter. It immediately makes his thumb red and swollen. Squidward scares him into thinking he'll lose his job because of the splinter, causing SpongeBob to panic. So instead of going to the doctor, he goes to Patrick. But whatever Patrick did makes the situation worse. Eventually, the small wound became so infected that it grew as big as SpongeBob's head, making it harder to hide. Patrick also panics and says that his doctor shift is over, leaving SpongeBob alone with his troubles. He eventually runs into Krabs and Squidward again, making him fear the worst. Krabs finally does the obvious and removes the splinter, and this lets all the infection out and the wound returns to normal. But an infected wound like that is no joke. Before antibiotics came a thing, it was one of the leading causes of death, but somehow SpongeBob is healed without any medication. But while this was all underwater, his luck didn't get any any better on land, because in this next one, he almost died from dehydration in the SpongeBob SquarePants movie. In the climax of the movie, SpongeBob and Patrick face certain death in the gift shop, but this was no ordinary gift shop. It was a beachside one selling sea creatures as souvenirs. The diver puts both of them under the intense light of the lamp, slowly removing all the water from them. A slow, painful death with both of them not even being able to move. They accept their deaths as even SpongeBob's arm breaks off. In one of the most emotional scenes, SpongeBob believes what everyone told him, that he was just a kid who was way over his head. Realization hits that just as they arrived at the destination they were longing for, they could not achieve the goal they were set out to do. They cry, and this ends up being what actually saves them. They turn into dehydrated souvenirs as the audience cries for them, but the tear travels to the socket of the lamp, short-circuiting it and creating smoke. The smoke then turns on the sprinklers, with the lamp turned off and the sprinklers spraying life-saving water. The pair is revived. This isn't the first time we see SpongeBob dehydrated, as it also happens in the very first season. Sandy invites SpongeBob over to her house, which runs on air obviously as Sandy needs to survive, but it wasn't until the end of that scene that she realizes that she needs water to save him. But everyone can agree that the scene in the movie is probably the closest that SpongeBob has ever come to absolute death. That was all the times that SpongeBob should have died. If you liked the video, be sure to smash that subscribe button for more. Now, we all know that SpongeBob has some really bad, triggering, and straight up disgusting episodes. But today, I want to do something different and find something that's actually good about all of them. To do this, we're going to be going through the worst rated episodes of every season, starting with the worst episode from season 1, with a rating of 8.2 out of 10, Squeaky Boots. And this episode is just about what you would expect from a title like that. The entirety of the episode is literally just SpongeBob going around and making these annoying squeaky noises with his new boots. This goes so far to the point where it literally gives Mr. Krabs PTSD from the noises. And overall, this is just a really unpleasant episode to watch. Usually, SpongeBob annoys a character in the episodes like Squidward, and it's entertaining for us the viewers. But in this one, SpongeBob is literally just trying to annoy the audience. And the repeated joke of SpongeBob's boots being squeaky starts to get annoying really fast. But what I will say is even though SpongeBob's squeaky boots were really annoying, Mr. Krabs' descent into madness throughout the episode is really funny to watch, and it probably reflects what all of us were thinking while watching the episode. Another thing that I really like about the episode is that Mr. Krabs' way of getting rid of the boots is literally eating them. So at the end of the episode, we get a gag where he starts squeaking when he talks, which is probably deserved for having such a dumb solution to that problem. But before we move on to the most hated episode of season 2, I see you guys watching there without being subscribed, and hey, we just started the channel, so you might as well help me out. But now, let's go on to the most hated episode of season 2. I'm with Stupid, and this episode has an 8.4 out of 10 rating on IMDb, which is a really high rating for the lowest episode in an entire season, and it really goes to show how loved OG SpongeBob was. This episode centers around Patrick and his family coming to visit, but the problem is that Patrick's parents think that he's really dumb. So SpongeBob, being a good friend, decides to help Patrick out by acting dumber than him, which theoretically would make Patrick seem less dumb. And it makes sense why Patrick dreaded his parents coming over so much. They treat him like absolute garbage. But thankfully, right on cue, SpongeBob shows up, and he starts acting really dumb, which starts to make Patrick's parents think that Patrick isn't as dumb as they think. But this quickly backfires and starts to become really mean-spirited, as it ends up with Patrick and his family just straight up bullying SpongeBob to a point where it's not funny anymore. For most of the visit, Patrick loves the attention. He finally feels like the smartest person in the room, but the plan falls apart when Patrick starts teasing SpongeBob too, hurting his friend's feelings. Just as their argument reaches its peak, another pair of starfish knock on the door. These newcomers reveal that they're actually Patrick's real parents, and Patrick's fake parents, Janet and Marty, remember that they don't even have a son.
Oh, that's right, honey. We don't have a son.
I think it's just in Starfish DNA to be really stupid. And I see why people might hate this episode. From Patrick feeling out of character, to the creators using the same joke of bullying SpongeBob over and over again, it makes sense. But honestly, I think the entire premise is really funny. And I think that the twist of his fake parents realizing that they're not actually Patrick's parents at the end is just great. And this episode still has a lot of that classic SpongeBob charm for me. But now, let's move on to the worst rated episode of season 3, The Sponge Who Could Fly. And this episode was a lot different than usual. First of all, the episode is technically considered the Lost SpongeBob episode. It's 22 minutes long instead of the typical 11-minute runtime. And the reason for this is because there's an extra 11-minute segment of the episode where Patchy the Pirate is searching for the Lost SpongeBob episode. And weirdly, what I do really like about this episode is how different it feels at the beginning with seeing Patchy the Pirate searching for the lost episode. I've always loved the live action scenes in the show, and something about them is just really nostalgic to me. But after nearly 8 minutes of build-up, the actual cartoon part with the lost episode is just fine. It's about SpongeBob trying to fly like a jellyfish. He gets made fun of by Bikini Bottom, and then eventually flies by accident. It's not terrible, but definitely not worthy of being called a lost episode. Fans expected something epic, or creepy, or special, but instead, they got a basic filler plot. Imagine being promised a secret forbidden episode, and then it's just SpongeBob floating on a hairdryer. While that may have been kinda boring, I never really hated this one, and generally, this is still considered really good compared to how low some of the ratings dip later on this list. But coming in as the worst rated episode of season 4, we have The Gift of Gum, with a 6.7 out of 10 rating on IMDb, and it's easy to see why, because the premise of this episode is Patrick giving SpongeBob the gift of a giant, disgusting ball of gum. And this thing is just really, really nasty. But for some reason, SpongeBob actually likes the gift initially. But then after underwear crawls out and literally starts talking to him, he decides his mission throughout the rest of the episode is to find new ways to throw away that gum without Patrick noticing. And that's another part of why this episode is so hated for a lot of people. The plot is just really one-dimensional and keeps focusing on just this basic premise, and it starts to get really repetitive to watch. But what I did really like about the episode is this part. At the very end, Patrick blows a giant gum bubble, accidentally covering the entire town in gum, which I think is another high point of the episode for me. I think if the gum wasn't nasty, it could have been a way better episode, because Patrick hoarding a giant wad of gum seems very in line with his character. But now, let's move on to the worst rated episode of season 5, which is To Love a Patty, with a 5.7 out of 10 rating. Yup, the whole plot of this episode is SpongeBob developing a romantic obsession with a Krabby Patty he cooked. He names it Patty, and takes it on several dates, sings to it, and treats it like a literal girlfriend. At first, it's just weird, but then it gets disturbing. As the days pass, the patty starts rotting. It turns green, grows mold, smells horrendous, and SpongeBob refuses to let it go. There are several scenes of him cuddling and kissing this decomposing burger, and by the end, it looks like something out of a zombie movie. Instead of being a goofy SpongeBob style joke, the episode plays it uncomfortably straight. SpongeBob acts genuinely obsessed, like a stalker in a horror film, and the other characters, especially Mr. Krabs, seems too scared to intervene. The vibe goes from, yeah, he just loves burgers, to this man needs therapy and possibly a biohazard team. And this episode really relies too heavily on visual gags, and him eating the patty at the end actually made me a little bit sick. But what's good about this episode? Well, for one, the musical number with SpongeBob singing to his patty in the episode actually went pretty hard.
Oh, baby, they may call me a fool.
And that's pretty much the only redeeming quality I could find. The rest of this episode is actually just pretty bad, but it only gets worse when we move on to the lowest rated episode of season 6, The Splinter, coming in at, believe it or not, a 4 out of 10 rating. So with a rating that bad, what makes this episode so unbearable? Well, for starters, the episode leans hard into gross out body horror. SpongeBob gets a tiny splinter, but instead of playing it for a quick gag, the show zooms in on it over and over. You get close-ups of the swollen, pus-filled wound, red, throbbing skin, goo squirting out, and so much more. It's the kind of stuff that makes you physically uncomfortable while watching. Even fans who usually enjoy SpongeBob's slapstick or gross jokes say that this one went too far. Literally, this whole episode just revolves around his splinter, and at the end, when Mr. Krabs removes it, it's just about as disgusting as you could imagine. Also, in this episode, Patrick pretends to be a doctor and shoves trash and a hammer into SpongeBob's wound as treatment, and this makes the situation horrifyingly worse. He's not funny here, just gross, useless, and borderline evil. Fans really hated how far Patrick's character was flanderized here, but what could possibly be good about an episode this bad? As much as the visuals make people gag, you have to admit, the animators went all in, even if it was disgusting. The sound design, the squishes, the pops, the oozes, it's all disturbingly accurate. If the goal was to make viewers feel the pain SpongeBob was in, then mission accomplished, I give it to him. But now, let's go on to season 7, where we literally have the worst rated episode of the entire show. That being A Pal for Gary, with an abysmal rating of 3.3 out of 10. It starts like any normal day, with SpongeBob feeding Gary. SpongeBob starts to go off for work, but poor Gary just wants to go for a walk, which makes Gary really sad. But it turns out he was just guilt-tripping SpongeBob, because when he leaves, he uses the leash to grab a bunch of stuff and starts watching a cowboy show. So it turns out bro is actually just completely fine. But SpongeBob, at work, starts to get worried and feels bad for Gary. So he calls him for some reason, which just makes SpongeBob feel even worse. So after getting off work, SpongeBob tries to find a solution to balance his responsibilities at the Krusty Krab, while also being a good pet owner to Gary. But when he's walking home, he finds a stand selling pets, which gives SpongeBob the idea to get a friend for Gary. The lady selling them tried to warn him that this isn't just any normal pet, but SpongeBob has negative brain cells, so he didn't exactly pick up on that. Back at home, and this thing is already acting really weird. SpongeBob names this pet Puffy Fluffy and lets him near Gary, but he nearly kills Gary any chance he gets when SpongeBob isn't looking. But as soon as SpongeBob gets involved, he goes back to looking completely innocent, like nothing ever happened. Things only get worse when SpongeBob puts them in bed together alone, which is probably the worst thing he could have done. SpongeBob still doesn't understand, so he brings Gary back downstairs to Puffy Fluffy, who seems to be sleeping nice and cute in a little ball. But when SpongeBob leaves, it turns out that this isn't Puffy Fluffy. It's actually just a ball of his shed skin. And when Gary goes back to the kitchen, he finds out that Puffy Fluffy evolved into a giant monster in the kitchen looking for anything to feed its appetite. And this thing is horrifying. Meanwhile, SpongeBob is still sleeping, so Gary is left by himself to fight off the giant monster. But he's just too weak and can't really do anything to defeat him. After a chase through the house over the entire night, SpongeBob finally wakes up, sees his house destroyed, and even after all this, he still blames Gary, even while he's being eaten by Puffy Fluffy. Most hated SpongeBob episodes in this video are just gross or lazy, but this one is straight up mean. It feels like emotional torture more than a goofy pet episode. There's no humor, no payoff, and no lesson. Just SpongeBob being blind and letting Gary suffer for it. SpongeBob was completely responsible for everything that happened in this episode, and it's really frustrating to watch Gary get tortured for literally no reason. But what could possibly be good about this? Well, it's definitely hard to think of something. The horror animation and transformation scenes were actually really well done. You can't deny that the animators went all in, and the transformation from a cute critter to a nightmare eel is smooth and pretty intense. And another plus is that Gary actually gets some spotlight in this episode, showing that he's not just a useless snail, but he actually is really powerful and even managed to defeat Puffy Fluffy. But other than that, yeah, this episode is pretty trash. But now let's look at something a little better, which happens to be the lowest rated episode of season 8, Demolition Doofus, coming in at a depressing 4.5 out of 10 rating. And in this episode, no joke, the main plot is that Mrs. Puff gets injured while on a driving test, and this makes her body permanently deflated. And after this, she vows to get revenge on SpongeBob for ruining her life. So what does she do? Well, she signs them both up for a demolition derby in an attempt to get SpongeBob killed. And she's not joking around. She actively cheers for his death death, tries to steer him into danger, and even lies about the event being safe. This isn't cartoon violence in a Looney Tunes way. It's just dark and straight up uncomfortable. A lot of fans found it depressing and out of sync with SpongeBob's usual charm. It's one of those episodes where no one is likable, not even SpongeBob. And somehow, SpongeBob is so bad at driving that he actually ends up accidentally making everyone crash into each other, coming out looking like an absolute driving god. So then, Mrs. Puff tries to go demolish SpongeBob herself. But SpongeBob is too clueless to even know what's going on, so they accidentally crash back into boating school, where Mrs. Puff becomes Puffy again. Mrs. Puff was super mean-spirited in this episode, but what I really liked about this one is just how dumb and unaware of what's going on in the world SpongeBob is. But now, let's move on to season 9, and the worst episode of this season was SpongeBob You're Fired, with a 4.5 out of 10 rating. And weirdly enough, this episode got a lot of political backlash from outlets like Fox News and the New York Post, who claimed it was a message against government assistance, which is already a really weird thing to claim about a SpongeBob episode. So let's see why this is. It starts off with a bunch of SpongeBob's normal antics in the Krusty Krab. When Mr. Krabs finds out that he's able to save a literal nickel a day if you fire SpongeBob, he decides to fire him. And SpongeBob predictably instantly becomes a mess. He goes back home and he's super depressed. But then Patrick comes barging in, literally, and shows him the wonders of the unemployed lifestyle, which I am very familiar with personally because I sit in a dark basement making videos about cartoons all day. But anyways, SpongeBob tries being unemployed, which Patrick calls fun employment, but SpongeBob gets bored after a while, so he tries working at some other places, but none of these 3 places he tries working at actually works out, and eventually, at the end of the episode, he goes back to working at the Krusty Krab. This episode is generally pretty bad, because watching SpongeBob suffer and fail job after job just isn't fun. It's depressing. He becomes hopeless, gets mocked, and struggles while trying to stay cheerful. SpongeBob is about underwater nonsense and jellyfishing, not real-world poverty and employment struggles. This episode felt too grounded and too real, and not in a good way. But the one thing about this episode that I do like is that SpongeBob always stays somewhat optimistic. Even after being fired multiple times, SpongeBob doesn't give up. He tries new jobs and tries to help others wherever he goes. Not because he has to, but because he genuinely cares and wants a purpose. And he's not too big of a fan of that whole fun employment thing. But anyways, now let's move on to the worst episode of season 10, Patrick's Coupon, with a 5.8 out of 10 rating. It starts off with Patrick and his rock fighting a sea spider when he finds a lost ice cream coupon. And the biggest complaint from fans is that this episode is just plain boring. The plot is literally Patrick trying to redeem an expired ice cream coupon, and it drags for 11 minutes straight. There's no big twists, no exciting conflict, and there are barely any jokes that land. The pacing is sluggish and almost nothing happens. Fans expected something funny, but instead they just got a lesson on how coupons work. The jokes in this episode revolve around coupon policy and technicalities. That might work in an adult sitcom, but in SpongeBob, it just feels dull and out of place. Most of the comedy comes from Patrick not understanding that his coupon is expired. But the one good thing about this episode is the art and the backgrounds were really solid. Despite the weak plot, the visuals are really cool, especially in the ice cream headquarters place that Patrick goes to. It's a rare case of the background art and the setting outshining the actual story. But now, let's move on to the worst episode of season 11, Ink Lemonade. And things are really going from boring to rough again, with this having a 4.9 out of 10 rating. The episode starts with Patrick having a lemonade stand, but it looks like he's actually just selling water, so Squidward gives him some garbage to put in his water, and right away, it's easy to see why this episode is so hated. But then, SpongeBob scares Squidward, which makes him bust ink everywhere. And then, of course, Patrick starts serving this, because he's Patrick, I don't think he has a brain, but for some reason, everyone likes drinking Squidward's ink. So then, Patrick goes back out to get more, and he realizes that if he scares Squidward, he can get more of his ink and sell it to make a profit. So this sets up an episode of just full-on Squidward torture, and Patrick messing with Squidward in the most brutal ways possible. From a giant spider to a haunted house full of things meant to scare him, this episode is one of the worst examples of Squidward torture. But then Squidward realizes that they're profiting off of him, so Squidward starts his own stand, advertising it as getting ink right from the source. But then disaster happens when he realizes he can't produce ink himself on his own will, and he only produces it when he's scared, which doesn't line up with any other times in the show when he was scared, but whatever, it's SpongeBob, nothing makes sense. Anyways, he gets a customer to scare him, and he splooges ink over everyone. And then no one wants it anymore because they realize it's kind of gross. This episode was pretty bad, with all the Squidward torture and gross out humor with Squidward's ink, and you can't forget Patrick's weird lemonade at the beginning of the episode. But the only good part in my opinion is, oh man, this is a hard one, isn't it? I think this would be a perfect episode if it didn't have the ink part. So if we just cut all around that and removed the parts with Patrick scaring Squidward to get the ink, which is 90% of the episode, I think it would be pretty good. But now, let's move on to the worst episode of season 12, the Nitwitting. The episode revolves around SpongeBob and Patrick joining a club called the Nitwits, where the entire purpose is to act like morons and cause chaos. But instead of fun cartoon nonsense, the episode turns into mindless destruction, and they do it all with zero awareness or consequence. Even fans who enjoy SpongeBob's dumb humor found this one too brain dead to enjoy. There's no plot, and it's just basically random scenes struck together. This is literally the definition of modern SpongeBob. This episode is basically just SpongeBob and Patrick joining a club, they put on plungers and helmets, and then it's 11 minutes of just random destruction, yelling, and noise. There's no goal, no progression, or real jokes. It's just a lot of mindless filler. In classic SpongeBob, the characters were goofy but lovable. And in this episode, they're just completely unhinged, acting like feral toddlers with no moral compass. In this episode, there is nothing left of the characters the fans used to know. But one thing I do really like about this episode is seeing how small Patrick's brain really is. It really makes me wonder how bro even functions. I also like how the club is literally in a cardboard box, but inside, it's massive. It makes me wonder how that's even physically possible. Wait, never mind. It's SpongeBob. Nothing ever makes sense. But let's move on to the worst rated episode of season 13, Chums, with a 4.9 out of 10 rating. And it starts with another one of Plankton's schemes to steal the secret formula. But Plankton, in his effort, unfortunately gets knocked down the drain and ends up in a bunch of really gross situations. But when he gets down into the sewer system, he finds a weird chum monster down there, and these people weirdly start obeying him. And the reason they're down there is because of all the chum Plankton has flushed down the drain from the chum bucket. And for some reason, when it mixes with the gas of the sewer, it creates living chum people. The rest of this episode pretty much revolves around him inside of his chum kingdom, until Plankton obviously gets the idea to use this to steal the secret formula, but their plans get foiled when SpongeBob accidentally hoses him with the water again. Plankton ends this episode right back where he started, friendless, alone, and still wanting to steal the Krabby Patty secret formula. It feels like the show in this episode just went out of its way to punish Plankton for existing, but one of the good things about it is that I have to say it's pretty creative having a whole sewer system network of living chum monsters. I feel like the writers must have been on something while writing this one, I can't even lie. But now, let's talk about the worst episode of season 14, Don't Make Me Laugh, with a 6.2 out of 10 rating. In this episode, SpongeBob and Patrick go to see a movie, but while they're laughing at a funny scene, SpongeBob's funny bone gets locked in position, and he can't stop laughing. He's literally not even in control of it anymore. And that is literally the entire premise of this episode. And it's honestly kind of boring and slightly annoying. The entire episode is just SpongeBob not being able to stop laughing, and this predictably messes up his life in a bunch of ways. But it's not until he realizes that his grandma can't stop laughing either, because her funny bone also got stuck in place, and it actually happens to all of SpongeBob's family, and they kind of just laugh it off and nothing ever gets resolved. solved. Although this episode was really annoying, I mean, it about fit the par for modern SpongeBob. The one good thing I have to say about this episode, though, is I have to give props to Tom Kenny. This had to have been the absolute hardest episode to film, because he was doing the SpongeBob laugh for pretty much 12 minutes straight, and considering he probably had to do redos as well, I can't imagine how hard this episode had to have been to film, and I have to respect that. But for our final episode, let's look at one from the brand new season 15, and the ratings might not be accurate yet because it's so new, so I'm gonna go off my personal least favorite for this season, and try to find something that's good about it. My pick for season 15 is A Taste of Plankton, and this one is absolutely disgusting. Basically, SpongeBob steps on Plankton and thinks that he's gum, and it ends up with Plankton sticking to his tongue throughout the entire episode. Once he's stuck to his tongue with glue, he predictably tries to use this as a way to steal the secret formula, but it doesn't work, and this is probably one of the worst SpongeBob gross out episodes. Like, this one's kind of just hard to watch. Yeah, this one really sucked. The only good thing about it was Patrick's armpit. Yeah, that's about it. But because you watched all the way to the end, you should find one good thing about my channel. The juicy red subscribe button down there. You better click it. This is a threat. From SpongeBob trying to hide a body, to evil clones, for most people thinking it's a kid's show, SpongeBob has some pretty messed up episodes. So today, we're gonna go over the 10 darkest ones to see how dark the show can really get. Starting with the graveyard shift. The episode starts at the Krusty Krab, where SpongeBob and Squidward are tasked with taking the night shift, which SpongeBob, for some reason, thinks is the most fun thing in the world, because it means he can work more. After a few hours of goofing around in the night shift, it starts to get really dark outside, and Squidward asks SpongeBob to take out the trash, which might not have been a very good idea. Yeah, clearly SpongeBob doesn't handle Sphere of the Dark well, which is not good, because Squidward sees this and wants to get his revenge on SpongeBob for being annoying all night long. So he tells him a very detailed, scary story about a man named the Hash-Slinging Slasher. He has a spatula for an arm, and every Tuesday night, he lurks outside. You know he's coming because first the lights will flicker, then the phone starts ringing, and then after that, a guy will arrive off a bus, and finally, he gets you. But what started as an obviously made-up story quickly turns into a nightmare for both of them, because later in the night shift, out of nowhere, the lights start actually flickering, and then shortly after, the phone rings, and nobody picks up. Squidward starts getting terrified as his own scary story starts coming to life, but then to put icing on the cake, a bus comes, and a random guy hops off of it, and if it couldn't get any worse, he reveals he has a spatula for an arm. The Hash-Slinging Slasher is actually real, and he makes his way busting into the Krusty Krab to get SpongeBob and Squidward.
Can I have a job application? I brought my own spatula.
Yeah, it turns out that this was just some random dude, and everything that happened that night was just a pure coincidence. But there's still one thing that's not adding up.
Wait, if that was you on the phone and you on the bus, then who was flickering the lights?
Yeah, this episode was really unsettling, especially with that ending. But these episodes are only gonna get darker as the video goes on. Coming in at number 9, we have One Course Meal. The episode starts with Plankton, as usual, trying to steal the secret formula. But this time, he actually gets pretty close, and gets Mr. Krabs and SpongeBob held captive in an elaborate machine. It seems like all hope is lost, until Mr. Krabs' daughter Pearl randomly walks in, and it turns out Plankton has a crippling fear of whales.
Stay back, whale! I'm privy to what you do to organisms like me. I've seen those documentaries.
So after Plankton runs away like a little baby, Mr. Krabs gets a very messed up idea to get back at Plankton. But instead of just using this newfound knowledge as a quick scare tactic, or maybe a one-time prank, Mr. Krabs decides to mentally destroy him. Back at the chum bucket, Plankton explains that why he has such a big fear of whales is because one took out his entire family. But then Pearl barges into the Krusty Krab and scares the ever-living heck out of Plankton. But it turns out this was actually just Mr. Krabs dressed up as Pearl. This all causes Plankton to lose sleep, and my boy Plankton does not look good. After many more sleepless nights, and literal nightmares about Pearl eating him, Plankton is so tormented by these constant fear attacks that he straight up tries to unalive himself by laying in the road and waiting for a car to run him over. Meanwhile, Mr. Krabs is celebrating this in his office. This is a children's cartoon with a TVY7 rating. Having references to psychological torture and unaliving yourself in the same episode is dark, but it's only gonna get darker, because coming in at number 8, we have the planet of the jellyfish, which starts just like a typical day, with SpongeBob and Patrick going jellyfishing. But it isn't until SpongeBob goes up to a suspiciously scary looking cave that's where things start to take a turn, and then a creature appears in the background, not doing anything, just watching. It eats a jellyfish and starts a jellyfish apocalypse around Bikini Bottom. And the apocalypse really starts when a jellyfish latches onto Patrick and creates an identical evil clone. For some reason, when SpongeBob goes up to him, it's not like evil Patrick tries to lash out or attack him or anything, but that might actually be because he has bigger plans in mind.
Yes, I too have caught many jellyfish. Perhaps we should give one to each of our friends.
Well, we've given everyone a jellyfish except Squidward. Ah, he probably doesn't want one.
But evil Patrick insists and makes sure that Squidward gets his jellyfish. And then, what do you know? An evil Squidward comes right out of the house. But for some reason, he also doesn't want to possess or kill SpongeBob. So, what is going on? SpongeBob goes and tries to get some sleep, but right as he lays in his bed, he gets up so the jellyfish can't do anything. And then he goes to the couch where he manages to somehow accidentally choke out the jellyfish and prevent himself from getting cloned. But it doesn't stop them from getting my boy Gary, turning him into a pot-creatured freak. Meanwhile, at the Krusty Krab, how far the jellyfish infection went really shows, as we see literally everyone besides a random customer getting possessed. And it's not like they attack him, they just kind of hiss at the customer, which I guess means that only the jellyfish can infect people. SpongeBob makes his way to the freezer to get some mayonnaise, and what happened to lay behind those boxes.
Is somebody in there? Monsters!
And this is where SpongeBob finally realizes that something is wrong. So he navigates himself back through the Krusty Krab, nearly avoiding all the possessed versions of SpongeBob characters. This is until he gets dragged into Sandy's dome, who is the only survivor of this whole apocalypse besides SpongeBob. And in the dome, after talking for a little bit, they find out that the only way to stop the jellyfish people is with mayonnaise, because earlier Patrick mentioned that he didn't like it.
No mayonnaise!
They don't have any mayo in the tree dome, but thankfully they have some glasses so they can blend in. Well, they make their way over to the Krusty Krab to grab some mayo and stop this apocalypse once and for all. And it looks like their disguises are actually working. But this is until SpongeBob knocks the glasses off like an idiot. So SpongeBob quickly grabs the mayonnaise in a last-ditch effort and starts squirting the aliens with it, which for some reason actually works. And they evaporate into green goo. And when they do this, their real-life counterpart comes back to life. So he squirts everyone, and one by one, they all go back to normal. But this is until we realize that the giant alien is still alive. And when SpongeBob tries to use mayo on it, it freezes before it can hit him because it's too cold in the freezer. But thankfully, Sandy has a big brain, so she turns up the heat, melting the mayo and saving the day, exploding the alien into a bunch of green slime. While Patrick's busy eating all that green slime, let's move on to the 7th darkest episode of the show, Rock Bottom, which starts with SpongeBob and Patrick leaving Glove World. They get on a bus, but while leaving, Patrick notices that they pass a sign that says leaving Bikini Bottom. And just before SpongeBob even gets a chance to look out the window and see what's going on, they shoot straight down a cliff, getting dropped into a town called Rock Bottom. And right away, this place gets really weird. We see a bunch of creatures that aren't like anything we've ever seen before. Something about these creatures are just otherworldly. Something I feel like we would never even see in the same waters as Bikini Bottom. But I mean, I guess this does make sense because we are way deeper in the ocean. But anyway, SpongeBob goes out and tries to see the bus schedule. But right as SpongeBob walks away for like 2 seconds, he misses the bus and Patrick and him end up getting separated. SpongeBob is all alone alone in rock bottom. So now, SpongeBob has no other choice but to sit there in the dark waiting for the next bus to come by. But SpongeBob is clearly not locked in because he gets distracted for literally like 10 seconds tying his shoe. And while he's doing this, the bus just flies by, not even giving him a chance to react. After missing the bus a few more times, SpongeBob starts to get hungry, so he goes to check out the local vending machine. It literally just feels like they're teasing him at this point. This has gotta be some sort of mental torture. SpongeBob then goes to the office to complain about this, and after waiting in line, it turns out that there are no more buses going to Bikini Bottom till the morning. But this is where the episode starts to get really creepy, because they shut down the office and turn all the lights off. Imagine being all alone in a new town, surrounded by a bunch of foreign fish people you can barely understand. I would hate to be SpongeBob in this situation.
Just gotta keep sprinting. Sitting, bleeding. Hey, who's there?
And right after he gets cornered, turns out it's just the guy who found his balloon from earlier. And he actually turns out to be pretty chill. And he's even kind enough to blow up the balloon to help SpongeBob gracefully float back home. If it took SpongeBob a whole day to escape, it would probably take Patrick a month. But while this episode may have been dark for its unsettling premise and creepy atmosphere, this next episode is dark for a reason you would never expect. Coming in at number 6, we have Earworm. This episode starts with SpongeBob listening to his favorite song, the musical Doodle, while working at the Krusty Krab.
Round and round the record spins all day. Listen again, it takes you far away. Trying to stop it is futile, so just listen now to my musical doodle.
Though, through this episode, SpongeBob just keeps listening to the same song. It's like he can't get enough of it, which is weird because SpongeBob usually has the attention span of a goldfish. He goes flying home from the Krusty Krab to listen to the musical Doodle, until he finds a record shop in town also playing the musical Doodle. So of course, he goes in and he has to buy it. He keeps going around and keeps playing this song, but not even Gary likes it. Later that day, SpongeBob tries to go to bed, but he quite literally cannot get this song out of his head. So he goes into the living room to listen to it just one more time. But the next day, something isn't right. When SpongeBob goes to work, it looks like he's sleep deprived. Most likely because he's been listening to the musical Doodle all night, and he didn't get any sleep. But something is different.
Musical Doodle. SpongeBob, wake up, boyo!
The song at this point is completely controlling SpongeBob. It's like he's not even in control of his own body anymore. So SpongeBob decides that he doesn't want to keep fighting it, and just embraces the musical Doodle, which at first might seem like it's working. But then he goes around and starts messing up things with his job, like accidentally giving a customer onions on their patty to a customer that didn't want onion, giving patties to the wrong customers, spitting on people, and just straight up annoying people with his singing. But after Mr. Krabs senses that he's losing money, he confronts SpongeBob and tells him that he has to stop singing. But SpongeBob just can't do it. So he goes back into the kitchen and he's struggling. He literally can't stop singing the song. And he starts going insane. He wrecks the whole kitchen and he is looking as creepy as ever, still singing the musical Doodle.
That you ran from is back again. You wonder if the madness will ever end.
Something is wrong. This isn't just him liking the song anymore. There is something deeper. The gang breaks into his house and they find him clung to the ceiling like a cockroach. They tie him up and then find out the truth. SpongeBob was suffering from a condition known as earworm, which when your brain gets stuck on a catchy tune, you can attract an earworm infection. And SpongeBob has a nasty one living in there, so they start singing SpongeBob a bunch of catchy tunes. Mr. Krabs tries an old sea shanty, but that doesn't work. Sandy tries playing a Western song, but that doesn't satisfy the earworm either. But then Squidward decides to start playing his clarinet. And it's so bad that the earworm just leaves because of how trash it is. But later that night when Squidward goes to bed, the earworm crawls in his head and makes Squidward sing to his own clarinet.
Oh yeah, that's catchy stuff, Squiddy.
Something about the thought of a worm crawling into your head and making you addicted to a song that's out of your control is terrifying. But these episodes are only gonna get more terrifying, because now we're on to the top 5. Starting with the episode A Pal for Gary. And this episode personally had me terrified as a kid. It starts like any normal day, with SpongeBob feeding Gary. SpongeBob goes off to work, but poor Gary just wants to go for a walk, which makes Gary really sad. But it turns out he was just guilt-tripping SpongeBob, because when he leaves, he uses the leash to grab a bunch of stuff and starts watching a cowboy show. So it turns out bro is actually completely fine, but SpongeBob at work starts to get worried and feels bad for Gary. So he calls him for some reason, which just makes SpongeBob feel even worse.
Too distraught to even answer the phone. Hello, you reached SpongeBob and... Come on, Gary. Meow. Gary. Ah! The two of us are having too much fun together to answer the phone right now. So leave a message and we'll call you right back if we ever get a break from having so much fun together.
So after getting off work, SpongeBob tries to find a solution to balance his responsibilities at the Krusty Krab, while also being a good pet owner to Gary. But when he's walking home, he finds a stand selling pets, which gives SpongeBob the idea to get a friend for Gary. The lady selling them tried to warn him that this isn't just any normal pet, but SpongeBob has negative brain cells, so he didn't exactly pick up on that. Back at home, and this thing is already acting really weird, he names this pet Puffy Fluffy, and lets him near Gary, but he nearly kills Gary any chance he gets when SpongeBob isn't looking. But as soon as SpongeBob gets involved, he goes back to looking completely innocent like nothing ever happened. Things only get worse when SpongeBob puts them in bed together, which is probably the worst thing he could have done. SpongeBob still doesn't understand, so he brings Gary back downstairs to Puffy Fluffy, who seems to be sleeping nice and cute in a little ball. But when SpongeBob leaves, it turns out this isn't Puffy Fluffy, but it's actually a ball of his own shed skin. And when Gary goes back into the kitchen, he finds that Puffy Fluffy evolved into a giant monster that is in the kitchen looking for anything to feed its appetite. And this thing is horrifying. Meanwhile, SpongeBob is still sleeping, so Gary is left by himself to fend off the giant monster. Meanwhile, Puffy Fluffy starts destroying the entire house, so Gary goes up and tries to fight back, but he's just too weak, and he can't do anything to defeat the giant monster. After a chase throughout the whole house, over the entire night, SpongeBob finally wakes up and sees the entire house destroyed.
Wow, my library! Oh, and my prized memoirs of T.S. Halibut.
SpongeBob barges in at the perfect moment and sees that Puffy Fluffy is about to kill Gary. But SpongeBob has to be the stupidest person in Bikini Bottom, because somehow he thinks that Gary is holding Puffy Fluffy hostage.
You put Fluffy down right now! Bad boy Gary! Bad boy! Bad Gary! Bad!
Puffy Fluffy starts trying to eat SpongeBob, but then Gary goes cowboy mode and actually screws up Puffy Fluffy, getting him to leave town. From now on, SpongeBob realizes that it's not right to leave Gary home alone, so the next day, he brings him into work. The giant monster in this episode is absolutely horrifying, and had me shivering in a dark corner as a kid. And this will always be one of the scariest SpongeBob episodes in my opinion. But another episode that scared the absolute life out of me was number 4 on this list, Krabby Patty Creature Feature. The episode starts with SpongeBob making some Krabby Patties like usual, but then Mr. Krabs hands out some patties to customers. They seem to not want the Krabby Patties, and it turns out they're getting sick of eating the same thing over and over again. They want something new. So after Mr. Krabs learns that they want something different, he takes SpongeBob to the secret basement of the Krusty Krab, where Sandy makes a new Krabby Patty, but SpongeBob thinks this isn't right, and doesn't want to change the Krabby Patty secret formula, although Mr. Krabs doesn't care, and just wants more money, so he gives out the new and improved patties, which everyone seems to love at first. This is until Mr. Krabs starts acting weird, and turns into a full-on Krabby Patty monster, literally becoming a Krabby Patty. And it's not just Mr. Krabs, because Sandy turns into one too, and so does everyone else in the Krusty Krab, so SpongeBob rushes out of there knowing something's wrong. Meanwhile, the Krabby Patty Patty monsters start running around the town infecting everyone, making random civilians eat them. And by eating them, it also turns them into Krabby Patty monsters. From Bubble Bass to random kids, everyone in town is now a Krabby Patty, except for SpongeBob, who knew the whole time that they never should have changed the recipe. SpongeBob escapes the Krusty Krab and tries to hide in a dumpster till this all blows over. But it's not going to be that easy, as all him waiting does is get the town destroyed even more. Eventually, in a stroke of luck, one of the only 3 people not affected, Perch Perkins, comes up to SpongeBob and interviews him on the news. But right as he gets taken out by a Krabby Patty monster, he reveals who the only other unaffected person is.
Take a bite!
Who's the third person not affected?
So SpongeBob bolts over to the chum bucket and barricades himself inside. And he tells Plankton everything that happened. But it might be too late, because they bust in and grab Plankton and even infect Karen. Now, SpongeBob is literally the only person not infected. So he climbs up the chum and accidentally breaks open a little, which causes Patrick to throw up because of how bad the chum is, which makes the orange Krabby Patty goo get out of his body. And he turns back to normal, so now SpongeBob realizes chum is the cure. So he feeds everyone chum and turns everyone back to normal. A Krabby Patty zombie apocalypse forcing them to eat each other is pretty dark. But so is number 3 on this list, Spongehenge. The episode starts with a bag of leftovers floating into SpongeBob's house because of the extreme winds that were happening in Bikini Bottom. So he goes to check it out and his sponge holes start whistling because of the wind.
My pores are whistling in the wind.
So he keeps going around playing with the wind until the sun takes over the moon's shift. So now SpongeBob has to go to work at the Krusty Krab, and he's about to be late, but the wind is so extreme that he can barely move. And the jellyfish outside aren't letting him leave. So no matter what SpongeBob does, he can't seem to get to work. So eventually, SpongeBob uses the phone and calls Mr. Krabs for some help. And thankfully, Mr. Krabs has a fishing rod for this exact scenario where SpongeBob can't get to work. So he uses it to reel SpongeBob all the way to the Krusty Krab. At work, the wind is so strong that it affects his Krabby Patties. SpongeBob finds his way around it, but what SpongeBob can't find his way around is the fact that the wind is still making his sponge holes play music, which keeps attracting the jellyfish. The winds blow even stronger and completely blow down the Krusty Krab, causing SpongeBob to blow right into Patrick's house for some cover. While he's there, he explains to Patrick that the winds keep making his sponge holes play a tune the jellyfish like. But it's too late, because the wind blows, knocking his rock open, and the jellyfish takes SpongeBob captive.
Hey, pal. Oh! SpongeBob! Get out of here! I'm sorry, SpongeBob, but you've become a negative influence!
So then, SpongeBob runs off to a cave where there's finally no wind, but it starts to get too scary for him. So to keep him company, he spends years chiseling out a stone replica of himself, and then SpongeBob starts to go completely insane, talking to this stone figure like it's real. But then he realizes it also has holes just like SpongeBob that might attract the jellyfish. So he puts the stone figure out, hoping it'll distract them, but it turns out that didn't do anything, because the music was way out of tune. So SpongeBob starts plotting and figures out that if he makes a bunch of these stone figures in different sizes, then surely one of them has to attract the jellyfish. And something about these things are horrifying. But the jellyfish seem to love it, so SpongeBob can finally go back to work. But there's a slight problem. It turns out he was in the cave for so long that the Krusty Krab is no more. This episode was really dark, but it doesn't even compare to this next one on the list. Coming in at number 2, we have SB-129, which already sounds weird just from the title. The episode starts with SpongeBob and Patrick annoying Squidward and begging him to go jellyfishing with them. But of course, Squidward isn't about that life. He just wants some peace and quiet to play his clarinet. When he finds out that the Krusty Krab is closed for the day, he gets an idea to sneak over there, lock the doors, and finally be left alone to play his clarinet. But things then start to go sideways really fast. When SpongeBob and Patrick start snooping around outside the Krusty Krab looking for him, Squidward panics and hides inside a freezer. And this might have been the single worst decision he's ever made, because he gets frozen solid for 2,000 years. When he finally thaws out, he walks inside the Krusty Krab, but everything is in the future. The walls are chrome, the air is empty, and the only person around is this weird robotic version of SpongeBob named Spongetron. Spongetron shows him around, and Squidward notices that everything is chrome, and SpongeBob just casually has clones, who still want to go jellyfishing. Eventually, Squidward gets sick of being there, so SpongeBob suggests he uses the time machine to go back home.
Well, if SpongeBob exists in the future, I'd better go to the past.
But Squidward accidentally goes way too far into the past, back to way before his time period. And now he's just trapped in a weird prehistoric time in the ocean. But eventually he makes his way around the creepy forest and finds caveman SpongeBob and Patrick, who are just as dumb as usual, if not even dumber. But they seem to be friendly, so Squidward decides that this is his perfect spot to play the clarinet. So he goes off a little bit, but he keeps hearing them screaming. And that's because they're playing with a jellyfish and stinging themselves. So Squidward teaches them how to properly jellyfish, and then goes back off to play his clarinet. When he finally goes off to do that, caveman SpongeBob and Patrick hear his awful music and get really mad. So they start chasing after him and wanting to kill him. So he goes back to the time machine and accidentally breaks it, which teleports him into nothingness. It's just an empty white room. Squidward thinks that this is the perfect quiet spot to play his clarinet, but then he starts to realize that he's alone, which makes him panic. So he tries to find a way out, and it's not until he says that he misses SpongeBob that everything goes back to normal.
SpongeBob! Patrick!
Hi, Squidward.
Oh, I'm back. I can't believe this. I was in space, and I went to the future, and then I went to the past, and then I was nowhere. But now I'm back.
This episode was horrifying. Like, imagine being trapped in nothingness. But before we get to number 1 on this list, I want to give a quick honorable mention to the episode that scared me the most as a kid. I Had an Accident, aka the gorilla episode. And honestly, nothing about this episode is really that scary or dark to me now, with the gorilla being very obviously CG'd in, but as a kid, I didn't notice that, and it terrified me. From him beating up Patrick and Sandy in a bag, to the gorilla literally ripping SpongeBob in half, I can see why it scared me as a kid. But also, the fact it makes no sense and has weird visuals really puts the creepiness over the top for me.
You know what I don't understand, though?
What?
What's a gorilla doing underwater in the first place?
Well, it's funny you should, see, George, they're onto us!
This episode was so scary to me that whenever it came on TV, I would literally cry and refuse to watch it. But now that we got that out of the way, let's talk about the actual darkest episode of the show. Coming in at number 1, we have The Nasty Patty. And this is by far the darkest SpongeBob episode. The episode starts with the health inspector coming to the Krusty Krab. So SpongeBob and Mr. Krabs give him a whole feast to satisfy him, so they can pass the Krusty Krab health inspection. But after everything seems good, the news comes on saying that there's been a fake health inspector going around town trying to get free food. And when they find this out, they are obviously not happy. Mr. Krabs and SpongeBob want revenge for this guy getting all that free food. So they decide to make a really disgusting Krabby Patty to get back fake health inspector. To make this abomination, they do things like putting hot sauce on it, dipping it in the toilet, rubbing it with Mr. Krabs' gym socks, and probably a whole other list of OSHA violations just to make it this disgusting.
Why, that's the most diabolical Krabby Patty ever spawned.
I call it
the nasty patty.
Mr. Krabs and SpongeBob give him the Krabby Patty, and although they thought it was a funny and lighthearted prank, they could have never expected what was coming next. When the health inspector is about to take a bite, a fly goes into his mouth and he starts choking on it, leading to a really disturbing scene where the health inspector is literally dying, and SpongeBob and Mr. Krabs are in the kitchen laughing at the pain he's in, not knowing it was too late, and he was actually dead. And to make it even worse, the news came on showing that the fake health inspector was caught, meaning that SpongeBob and Mr. Krabs were now left alone with an unalive body of the real health inspector in their restaurant. Not wanting to take responsibility for their actions, Mr. Krabs decides that the only logical thing to do is to bury the body far, far away so that nobody finds out about this.
Now then, get back to digging!
Aye, aye, sir. Yeah.
Where am I?
That's right. To make things even worse, it turns out that the health inspector isn't even dead. So they bury him alive, and if things literally could not get any worse, the cops show up. The gig is finally up, or that's what they thought, because it turns out they actually just randomly found them lost out there and wanted to give him a ride back home. So they agree, but then the worst thing that could have possibly happened happens, because the mud gets washed off of the body and it goes sliding down the hill right next to the cop car. So now they're left with no choice but to hide the body in the back of the cop car.
Neptune, get away!
After that long, awkward car ride back home, where Mr. Krabs somehow made SpongeBob stay quiet, SpongeBob eventually sneaks out of the car back to the Krusty Krab, where he's tasked with getting the body in the back of the car while Mr. Krabs distracts him. But unfortunately for him, the back is locked. So SpongeBob somehow puts the body in his hat and sneaks it in.
Ahoy there, SpongeBob! I thought you were out back, taking care of that shovel!
Well, the back door was locked, so I came around here.
While we go through a minute of SpongeBob struggling to get his hat in the bat, Mr. Krabs somehow manages to distract them for long enough to not know what they're doing. But finally, after everything seems good, Mr. Krabs offers them a drink, right as the cops are about to leave. But this was the worst mistake he could have made, because the officer wanted ice in her drink, and for some reason, she insists on going to the back to get ice.
Step aside. You people act like you've committed a murder.
Okay, I confess! SpongeBob killed him!
After blaming each other back and forth, with not many options, Mr. Krabs confesses that they killed him, and hid his body in the freezer. When they go back to check, he is nowhere to be seen.
Say, maybe he turned into a zombie and walked out.
Nah, turns out he just woke up. But that doesn't stop everyone from believing he's a zombie and beating him up even more. In this episode, we saw an attempted murder, corpse concealment, and full-on zombie paranoia. This really doesn't sound like your typical SpongeBob episode, and it's arguably one of the darkest ones in the entire show. But yeah, those were the 10 darkest SpongeBob episodes of all time. Let me know if you agree with these down below. And because you watched all the way to the end, you should click the subscribe button, because I just started this channel and I would love to cover anything and everything SpongeBob related for you guys. This is every episode of SpongeBob that has scenes that were deleted from the show, and today we're going over all of them, starting off with the episode Shang-Haired. This one wasted no time, as the intro to this episode is often not found in reruns. The original episode starts off with Patchy the Pirate saying that he will watch his favorite episode. Then he gets launched out of a cannon by Potty. The extended version also shows the aftermath, with a burnt Patchy coming back with his usual positive attitude, and the line,
Well, roll the cartoon!
Continuing into the episode, SpongeBob and Squidward's houses both get smashed by an anchor. In response to this, both of them, along with Patrick, climb the rope to find themselves aboard the Flying Dutchman ship. Now, this was no ordinary ship, of course, and was home to the Dutchman ghost, who tried to scare the trio. This fails miserably and earns Squidward a scorching, followed by a trip to the Fly of Despair. there. Now, in my opinion, this should have been the scene to be edited, but Nickelodeon decided that that was perfectly okay. He then curses the other two to a lifetime of service to him as his crew. SpongeBob and Patrick's plan was to help horrify the citizens of Bikini Bottom, but it doesn't go according to plan, leading to scenes such as this. Just as SpongeBob and Patrick start loving their new jobs, the Dutchman decides that he got enough of this run. He immediately informs the pair that he intends to eat them. They obviously weren't fond of this idea, so they escaped through the dreaded perfume department. Once they're successful, they steal the Dutchman's dining socks, as he doesn't eat without them. In the fight that ensues, the Dutchman poses a deal in exchange for the sock. He will grant them 3 wishes. Here's where the magic happens, as in the edited episode, the first 2 wishes are wasted, and SpongeBob uses the final wish to get out. But when Shinghaired had first aired, the 3rd wish was actually left up to the audience in a phone voting system. But that's not all, as there were alternative endings too. In one ending, Squidward gets the final say, and he wishes that he had never met SpongeBob and Patrick. This, however, backfires on him. In the other ending, Patrick wishes for gum as his final wish in a very classic dumb Patrick move. But while this was a good episode, this next one took the amount of deleted and altered scenes to a whole nother level, while also staying relatable. I'm talking about the episode Procrastination. This episode has not 1, not 2, but 3 deleted scenes. The episode starts with SpongeBob needing to write an essay for class, but he ends up getting distracted by his friends playing outside. Things only get worse as SpongeBob starts doing every other task except for the essay. Things hit a peak when SpongeBob enters a lucid state, suddenly seeing all of his possessions conspiring against him and his work. He watches as a flame lights up his house, burning the paper as well. Thankfully, he soon wakes up realizing that this was all part of a nightmare, but not everything was solved, as SpongeBob realizes that it was 5 minutes before class. He speedruns the assignment, making the deadline, but what he doesn't realize is that the class was canceled, and all of his efforts were in vain as the episode closed. Now, as relatable as all this was, what die-hard fans realized is that in the original, there were 3 scenes that were quietly scrubbed from the episode. The first one is when SpongeBob is distracted by his friends playing. In the original clip, there was actually a shot of Patrick rubbing sunscreen on Sandy's back. It was deemed suggestive and edited out. The second one is even more bizarre. When SpongeBob fantasizes about what would happen after he finishes the essay, this clip was shown. It was meant to be a joke for the running gag that SpongeBob always crashes when he takes his boating test. Apparently, it was this time that the editors felt that kids might reenact it in real life. But to top it all off comes the weirdest scene. In one of the tasks he does to avoid the essay, SpongeBob exercises, and it led to this scene. But this was also considered suggestive and had to be cut out. But in the end, SpongeBob thankfully got his essay done. But now, let's talk about the next deleted scenes in the episode Just One Bite. Just how far could one go to get a Krabby Patty? Well, Squidward's about to answer that in the deleted scene we're about to look at. The episode starts off like any other in the Krusty Krab. Squidward was, as usual, hating his job. He says that he hates Krabby Patties, despite never actually trying one. A loyal SpongeBob then tries to get him a Krabby Patty, and after some fighting, Squidward finally takes a bite of one. Squidward's opinion on the Krabby Patty seems to remain unchanged, as he angrily says that the Krabby Patty was the worst food he has ever eaten.
Krabby Patty may be the most horrible, putrid, disgusting excuse for a sandwich to have slither down my throat,
and buries the patty to its death. But when SpongeBob leaves being defeated, Squidward desperately digs up the patty and eats the remains. As the realization hits, he is no better than the rest of them and loves the infamous burgers. He wants to have more, but his pride won't allow him to admit his mistakes, so he tries to sneak one. This, however, does not end well for him. Luckily for us, this does not kill his hopes and desires. In fact, it will lead Squidward to have a dream about Krabby Patties as his wife. And most importantly, the cursed deleted scene. You see, in the edited episode, Squidward simply sneaks into the Krusty Krab and finds the patty vault. He gets his wish and lives happily ever after. But his journey was not so simple at the start. In the original episode, as Squidward enters the Krusty Krab, he gets flamed up by 2 buckets of gas as booby traps and security. but it was for a good reason, as this episode aired after one of the most tragic moments in history, 9/11. Nickelodeon did not want to use any explosions at that time, since it was a sensitive issue, but while Squidward played it relatively safe in his love for Krabby Patties, SpongeBob took it to a whole nother level in this next deleted scene, in the episode To Love a Patty. Everyone knows how loyal SpongeBob is to the Krusty Krab and Krabby Patties, but this episode takes that idea to its absolute limits. It starts off with SpongeBob making a lot of Krabby Patties. He falls in love with one of them and ends up calling it Patty. SpongeBob genuinely believes in her and eventually brings her home. The pair start dating and doing ridiculous couple activities together. As the episode goes on, Patty slowly spoils, but this doesn't seem to bother SpongeBob, as he takes Patty to a date at the Krusty Krab. Everyone tries to talk some sense into SpongeBob, as the rancid smell was driving everyone away, but SpongeBob doesn't give in until he smells Patty, which seems to break the trance. He then realizes what he must do and eats Patty. While the general concept of this episode was innocent, there was one scene which would have changed everyone's mind. Originally, there was a scene where SpongeBob wakes up in nothing but his underwear next to the Krabby Patty that had bite marks in it. Luckily, the scene was deemed too suggestive and removed from the episode altogether. But both Squidward and SpongeBob's lives don't get any easier in the next episode, SpongeBob in Random Land. A token of appreciation is often good, but that's not what happened in SpongeBob in Random Land from season 12. The episode starts off with Mr. Krabs and his usual obsession with money. So when an order comes in from Random Land, a dangerous town where nobody can predict what can happen, Krabs sees a fortune waiting to be made. So he forces SpongeBob and Squidward to deliver the order, and so they begin their journey. The episode documents this quest of finding the customer in Random Land, all while witnessing just how random the place really is. SpongeBob and Squidward don't give up no matter the obstacle, and finally find their customer. But it wasn't before going through this scene. But this scene was never supposed to be this innocent. In the original scene, an appreciation of Squidward fan art came with this jump scare. Safe to say, a lot of kids were frightened by this, causing Nickelodeon to quietly edit it out of the reruns. But now, let's move on to the next deleted scene. In the episode Scaredy Pants. Season 1 of the show was considered to be fairly innocent. That is, until the Scaredy Pants episode. That really scared some of the younger audiences. The episode starts with everyone taking advantage of SpongeBob, who gets easily scared. They nickname him SpongeBob Scaredy Pants.
That's just SpongeBob Scaredy Pants.
As he rushes home and even gets more scared by everything around him. Thus begins his quest to appear scary, but none of his tricks quite work. He then crashes a Halloween party, dressed up as the Flying Dutchman. People laugh at him when he fails, and things hit a breaking point when the real Flying Dutchman arrives. In his final show of anger, the Dutchman removes the costume from SpongeBob and sees him with his brain exposed. This horrifies the ghost, who understandably runs away as fast as he could. And as soon as the rest of the characters see it, they flee the scene too. But if you thought a far off shot wasn't enough, the original episode had planned the camera angles very differently. SpongeBob's costume was meant to be on full display, with close-up shots to capture how truly horrifying he was. But luckily, SpongeBob's production team decided that a far off shot and an ending reassuring the audience that SpongeBob's skin will grow back would fix the issue. But hey, at least SpongeBob got his wish. While SpongeBob willingly shaved off his skin in the episode, Sandy had something worse done to her. In the episode, someone's in the kitchen with Sandy, ranked as one of the worst episodes in SpongeBob history. This episode was unsettling to begin with, and yet fans didn't realize that there was a worse version waiting for them this whole time. The episode starts off with Plankton trying to steal a Krabby Patty from Sandy. When that doesn't go according to plan, he follows her into the tree dome. He then watches Sandy take off her astronaut suit, but it doesn't stop there, as she also takes off her fur coat like a suit. Plankton then steals this suit, which he wears to steal the Krabby Patty secret formula, formula. He successfully manages to convince SpongeBob that he is indeed Sandy, and SpongeBob begins teaching him various things around the kitchen. But SpongeBob is not a merciful coach, making Plankton do mundane tasks and waiting to get them perfectly right, all while Sandy is searching for the culprit of the missing fur coat. Just as Plankton got his hands on the formula, Sandy breaks in and makes Plankton surrender. But the original clip was somehow more disturbing than this. In it, Sandy was initially meant to be naked in the episode, and this led to a big plot hole in the episode. But the production team scrapped the idea, and Sandy got back her signature underwear. This wasn't the only deleted scene though, as Sandy had also covered herself up with a construction cone, creating an accident. There was yet another scene where she tried to buy clothes, but the manager kicked her out, saying no clothes, no service. Luckily, in all of these instances, Sandy does end up getting her suit back. But now, let's take a break and look at some deleted scenes from the SpongeBob movies, starting out with some deleted scenes from Sponge on the Run, the third movie of the franchise, and the production crew had a lot of experiments they wanted to conduct on the film. The film was set in motion as a result of one of Plankton's plans. He and Karen decided that SpongeBob was the reason all their plans failed. Meanwhile, in Atlantic City, the selfish ruler, Poseidon, uses up all of the slime from his latest sea snail, which is necessary to maintain his appearance. He orders the obtaining of a new snail, and Plankton kidnaps SpongeBob's pet snail, Gary, so that SpongeBob will no longer interfere with his plans. Once SpongeBob realized that Gary was missing, he swore to bring him back. Plankton was even so kind as to loan SpongeBob his robot for the journey.
Otto is your ticket.
And off went SpongeBob and Patrick on their mission to bring Gary back home. Without SpongeBob cooking Krabby Patties, the Krusty Krab's enraged customers trash the restaurant, despite Mr. Krabs and Squidward's best efforts to stop them. Otto, Plankton's robot, drives SpongeBob and Patrick to an old western town, where they meet a tumbleweed spirit named Sage. He reveals to SpongeBob and Patrick that they are dreaming, and they must overcome a special mission to continue their search, giving them a challenge coin to grant them bravery. They enter a tavern by the ghostly zombie pirates and decide to free their souls from the evil spirit El Diablo, but Diablo traps the duo. They get out of the situation where Diablo is accidentally disintegrated from them. They even free other pirate souls, as SpongeBob and Patrick were woken by Otto. Now, accompanied by Sage, SpongeBob discovers that Poseidon will enslave him with the rest of his previous snails. When Gary Slime runs out, arriving in Atlantic City, Sage warns the pair to not be distracted by the city's attractions, but they ignore his last warnings. After a fun-filled night, SpongeBob and Patrick discovered that they have lost the coin challenge that allowed them to be brave, but they nonetheless enter Poseidon's palace. Both are immediately arrested and imprisoned in a dungeon, where they try to take Gary. Krabs, Plankton, and Sandy all stage a rescue, and they end up becoming friends with the king. A cute story with a good moral in a fully animated movie. Or that's what Nickelodeon wants you to think. Originally, it was supposed to be a hybrid live-action movie, with King Poseidon being an actual human being. He was also meant to have dark black minions to corner SpongeBob and Patrick. But in this plotline, Poseidon kidnaps Gary to clone him, but Paramount rejected that idea. But it gets even crazier. What if I told you that there was a plot not under the sea, but with cats instead? Before the production of the movie, the team was also toying with the idea of a science fiction approach, and giant cats were the villains. And it didn't stop there. There was another idea that involved the characters visiting a whole different worlds, such as a futuristic one made up of dolphins, but those were scrapped because Steven Hillenburg, the creator of the show, loved the more realistic plots, and so the team did what he would have wanted. There were other scenes directly from the movie. For example, the Camp Coral flashbacks were meant to be in the start of the film, not hiding the blatant advertisement for their recent show, but it was later moved to be further into the movie. That wasn't all, as initially, Gary's droppings could have been seen when SpongeBob was looking for him in his litter box. Overall, it's clear that a lot went into this movie, and it was overall a success. But now, let's talk about the next deleted scenes. In the episode Truth or Square, this one was meant to be the Krusty Krab's 117th birthday, airing as a special episode. But there was one line in a scene that would have changed how we saw SpongeBob before being quietly deleted. The episode starts with Patchy holding a TV extravaganza and waiting for SpongeBob. Once he realizes that SpongeBob is not coming, he gets on his boat and goes to Bikini Bottom Atoll. In an animated part, SpongeBob is getting ready for his usual day as a fry cook, except this time, he's extra excited because it was an anniversary for the Krusty Krab. Krabs make sure the security is tight before doing the event, while Plankton decides that it's the perfect time to strike. Soon after, the Krusty crew went into a freezer to get an ice sculpture that SpongeBob made for the occasion, but as soon as they went inside, the door shut behind them and locked itself. The gang tried to escape through the air ducts, and Plankton joins them. And also, Patchy the pirate gets eaten by a whale. Back in Bikini Bottom, the gang has a lot of flashbacks to everything that has led up to this point. While Plankton tries to overhear the formula, he gets thrown out, and Krabs' wallet is allowed to escape in order to get his money. They try to use a radio transmitter to call Sandy to come rescue them, but this startles Patrick, who destroys the transmitter. This leads to SpongeBob remembering that he once got married to Sandy before being revealed to be a play.
SpongeBob, do you take Sandy as your lawfully wedded wife?
I do.
And Sandy, do you take SpongeBob as your lawfully wedded husband?
And how?
And here's where it gets interesting, because in the original clip, SpongeBob was supposed to say one line. As the priest says that he didn't know it was a play, SpongeBob says,
"But it doesn't have to be."
And Sandy then slaps him. This was cut to ease any doubts that SpongeBob liked Sandy romantically, and Nickelodeon never spoke of it again. At the end of the episode, SpongeBob saves the Krusty Krab by singing a song, closing the episode for good. But while this episode spared SpongeBob from a lifetime of marriage, this next one spared him from a torture room. I'm talking about the episode Snowball Effect. This episode was meant to be innocent, just the characters having a snowball fight, but the original clip had one extra detail that would have turned a lot of heads. The episode begins with an iceberg floating over Bikini Bottom, causing it to snow. SpongeBob and Patrick immediately jump on the opportunity to have a snowball fight, and they try to get Squidward to join, but he turns down the offer, choosing instead to watch the fight in hopes that SpongeBob would get injured. But his words cause SpongeBob and Patrick to sign a peace treaty, infuriating Squidward. In order to get the fight to continue, he joins in, but it was clear that it was no joke to Squidward. When the relentless attacks feel too serious to the duo, they quietly sneak back to the pineapple to evade Squidward. Taking the opportunity, Squidward creates a full-blown fort called Fort Squidward. He gets into a lucid state, believing that he was still being attacked by SpongeBob and Patrick. Meanwhile, the duo relaxes in the pineapple as the episode ends. But what a lot of fans don't know is that originally, we were meant to see the inside of Fort Squidward. He had made a fully equipped torture room with a rack and even a guillotine. The scene never made it to production though, as it was considered too violent for the show. But now, let's move on to the next episode with deleted scenes, Sailor Mouth. This episode had a lot of controversy to begin with, as SpongeBob learns to curse, along with Patrick. But once the original recordings were leaked, no one could unhear it. The episode starts with SpongeBob getting ordered to take out the trash, where he finds a swear word written on the dumpster. He and Patrick decide that it was a sentence enhancer, and the next day, they use it everywhere.
Hi, Squidward! How the are ya?
Nice day, isn't it, Squidward?
All of the customers leave to go somewhere more family-oriented, and they finally learn from Squidward that there are 13 bad words, and the one they were using was the 11th one. This causes SpongeBob and Patrick to wipe their tongues and swear that they would never repeat it again. But as expected, this promise would be short-lived. Back at the house, the duo play a game of eels and escalators. When SpongeBob loses, he shouts the bad word. Patrick tries to go to Mr. Krabs and snitch on SpongeBob, but in the chase, he does the deed himself. They both tell on each other, causing Mr. Krabs to punish them by forcing to give the Krusty Krab a new coat of paint. But when Mr. Krabs gets hurt, he says all 13 of the bad words in one shot. This causes the duo duo, with Krabs following them to go to Betsy Krabs' house to snitch on her son. Betsy faints when she hears so much cussing and scolds all of them. The episode ends with Betsy also swearing, but it was just a horn sound, giving them all a good laugh. The important thing in this episode is that every time one of the characters cursed, there was a dolphin squeal to cover up the word, but the voice actor in the original recording actually said these words. In a Giga-leak, these uncensored recordings have been fully released. Some fans actually edited the video part to match the audio, giving the full experience. But the next deleted scene on the list is from another SpongeBob movie, which, like in the previous movie, had a lot of changes, and the one we're talking about is Sponge Out of Water from 2015. This movie was a first of its kind, using CGI to animate SpongeBob, but it was initially never meant to use it, and buff SpongeBob was never even a thought. The movie follows another pirate called Burger Beard, who plans to steal the formula, the one thing that Mr. Krabs and SpongeBob have been guarding with their lives for decades. Plankton also makes an attempt to steal it, but just as he gets his hands on the bottle, it disappears. SpongeBob and Plankton escape in a soap bubble, as SpongeBob knows that Plankton is innocent. Bikini Bottom turns into a wasteland without the formula, and SpongeBob swears to bring it back. Time travel is introduced, and the duo meet a magical dolphin, Bubbles, overseeing the galaxy, but they accidentally get him fired when Jupiter and Saturn collide. After escaping that situation, they try to steal the formula from the past, only to realize that it was the fake that Plankton had planned earlier. Sandy suggests a sacrifice to the sandwich gods for Krabby Patties, and SpongeBob volunteers. As the town tries, SpongeBob mentions he smells Krabby Patties, which Mr. Krabs also confirms. The townsfolk follow the scent to the surface, and Bubble returns, expressing his hatred for his job and his gratitude to be fired. He thanks SpongeBob by allowing him and his friends to breathe on land to follow the smell. The team lands on a beach and discovers that the smell leads to Burger Beard's shop, which he had converted to a real food truck. The pirate is revealed to have stolen the formula using the magical book, which then he tries to banish the group to an island full of pelicans. SpongeBob uses that page Sandy had to transform himself and the others into superheroes. They find Burger Beard, who tries to run away, but they catch up to him. The team destroys the book during the ensuing battle, but Burger Beard manages to overpower them. Plankton ends up being the one to save the day. He had become a muscle-bound hero, attacking Burger Beard with SpongeBob's help. They get the formula back and send Burger Beard flying to Bikini Bottom. Using the final page's magic, the gang returns to Bikini Bottom. With the Krabby Patties back, the city returns to normal, and Plankton resumes his usual formula-stealing plans. But what if SpongeBob was never supposed to become a superhero? In retrospect, it feels like it went off track to what the show represents, instead trying to make SpongeBob into a parody of Marvel. There is a simple explanation to this though. Mr. Krabs' voice actor, Clancy Brown, once revealed that Paramount heavily restricted the production of the film. Initially, the movie was supposed to be entirely 2D animation, but Paramount wanted CGI sequences. They felt that CGI would be good to market, and this can clearly be seen in all the advertisements played during that time. But that's not all. They also removed almost every scene that involved Mrs. Puff and Mr. Krabs' daughter, Pearl. The executives felt that these characters were not as popular as Sandy, and so to give her more screen time, they cut them off. If that wasn't enough, the original film was also supposed to have a full song that they edited out in the final cut.
Oh, Monday! Thank gosh it's Monday, my number one day.
SpongeBob, in his usual cheery self, finds the silver lining in what's the most dreaded day of the week for many. But this song was cut, and the reason for it was never given. Speaking of deleted scenes, the movie was also supposed to have a callback to one of the show's jokes. It was none other than the Nasty Patty, the ones that poisoned the health inspector in one of the episodes. After the formula is stolen in the movie, SpongeBob should have created them as a result of forgetting what actually to do. In a desperate desperate move, Krabs serves them to the refund-demanding customer. As expected, this did not go well, and the customers puke all over Squidward. But this scene was obviously removed on account of them being too gross. After all of these changes, audiences finally got to see the movie as it is today. But not even the first movie was spared from getting its scenes taken apart, as seen in the original SpongeBob SquarePants movie, the very first movie to start the SpongeBob film series, and perhaps the most beloved one of them all was this one. But despite that, this movie was sorely missing one of its key characters. The movie starts with Mr. Krabs opening a second location of the Krusty Krab, right next to the original. His fry cook, SpongeBob SquarePants, hopes to be promoted to manager of the new restaurant, but Krabs instead selects his co-worker, Squidward, explaining to SpongeBob that he's just a kid who is too immature to handle the position. Depressed, SpongeBob goes to the Goofy Goober ice cream parlor, where he and his best friend Patrick Star indulge themselves with ice cream, and wake up the next morning with a hangover. Krabs' rival, Plankton, initiates Plan Z in an attempt to obtain the Krabby Patty secret formula. He steals King Neptune's crown and sends it to Shell City, and frames Krabs for the crime. Neptune confronts Krabs about the stolen crown and is convinced of Krabs' guilt. SpongeBob promises Neptune that he will be back with the crown. In order to ensure that SpongeBob keeps his promise, Neptune freezes Krabs and threatens to execute him if SpongeBob does not return in 6 days. SpongeBob and Patrick head for Shell City in the Patty Wagon, a Krabby Patty-shaped car stored underneath the restaurant. After the duo leave Bikini Bottom, Plankton steals the formula from the frozen crabs and uses it to sell Krabby Patties. He distributes free helmets with the Krabby Patties that brainwash customers into doing Plankton's bidding. This lets him take over Bikini Bottom, with Dennis as a hitman for SpongeBob to keep his position. After encountering a trench, Dennis, and a human diver on their path, SpongeBob and Patrick learn to behave like men. They even get a ride from David Hasselhoff back to Bikini Bottom. They reach just in time to save Krabs, but Plankton unleashes his slave army off on them. SpongeBob, embracing the fact that he's accomplished so much despite being a kid, uses the power of rock and roll to play the Goofy Goober rock song, freeing Neptune and the citizens of Bikini Bottom from Plankton's control. As Plankton is arrested by the police, Neptune unfreezes Krabs, who grants SpongeBob his wish to become the manager of Krusty Krab 2. Now, it's easy to see why this movie was so loved by the audiences. At the very start of the movie, we see human pirates, but there was somebody that was missing. Patchy the pirate and Potty the pirate never made their appearance in the movie. According to the showrunners, they felt that the intentionally low production of Patchy scenes in the show conflicted with the quality of the movie, and so they cut him out. He was instead replaced with Captain Bart the pirate, but there were minor changes to the movie too. In the Goofy Goober scene, SpongeBob was supposed to call the people attending to him as bartenders, but this was later changed to waiters so that it didn't get associated with alcohol consumption. But perhaps the biggest scene change is when the duo escape Shell City. Originally, they were supposed to meet Sandy, and she was an actual squirrel. This disgusts Patrick to the point where he vomits to express it. On top of this, Sandy was also supposed to have squirrel exterminators after her. Makes you wonder why Sandy wants to go back to land so much. Another shocking difference is that SpongeBob and Patrick were supposed to meet the human versions of themselves, but it was cut out for not being in line with the film. Speaking of SpongeBob's first movie, let's go back to his first episode, Help Wanted, because there's actually some deleted scenes in this. When SpongeBob finally applies for the job of becoming a fry cook at the Krusty Krab, with some encouragement from Patrick, he tumbles into the restaurant, but his neighbor Squidward is horrified and tries to get Mr. Krabs to reject him. Mr. Krabs takes Squidward's side and gives SpongeBob an impossible task for a very particular spatula.
Go out and fetch me a hydrodynamic spatula with, port and starboard attachments and turbo drive. And don't come back till you get one.
Thinking they got rid of him, the duo try to get on with their day, but they get ambushed by anchovies. Mr. Krabs and Squidward climb onto a pole to get away from the mob of customers. SpongeBob returns, having fulfilled the task, and proceeds to serve every single one of them. This earns him the fry cook job that he prides himself on for decades to come. But not even the theme song was the same in the first making of this episode. episode. SpongeBob SquarePants was initially meant to be called SpongeBoy Ahoy, and with that came this theme song. But intros aren't the only ones to be changed in the show, as the episode Graveyard Shift had an entirely different ending to the episode. Krabs isn't the only one taking advantage of others in this episode, as the original recording was meant to end with someone else, giving it a very different ending. The episode starts with a customer not getting the memo on the Krusty Krab's opening hours, but hearing the word money makes Krabs instantly open the restaurant to be 24/7. Squidward is not happy and finds his joy by playing around with SpongeBob's fears. Realizing that SpongeBob was afraid of the dark, Squidward tells him the story of the hash-slinging slasher.
At this very restaurant, the hash-slinging slasher used to be a fry cook, just like you.
But Squidward seems to never learn his lesson, as karma comes for him once again. 3 a.m. soon arrives, and the restaurant is now completely devoid of customers or any other signs of life, besides SpongeBob and Squidward. Suddenly, the lights begin flickering, though Squidward initially thinks SpongeBob is to blame. After realizing that nobody's touching the light switch, Squidward then blames the faulty electrical wiring, as the restaurant was not built to run 24 hours a day. Soon after, all of Squidward's stories start to come true. The phone rings with no one on the other end. A mysterious bus arrives and drops off a singular customer with a spatula for a hand. Getting scared out of their minds, Squidward and SpongeBob cling to each other. But when the person steps into the light, they realize that it was just a normal person wanting a job at the Krusty Krab. The lights flicker once again, but this time it's revealed to be a vampire named Nosferatu. They casually tease him as if it's a well-known habit to the Krusty Krab and staff alike. Smiling at the trio mischievously, he flicks the lights off once more, cutting to black and ending the episode. But this ending did not feature Floorboard Larry, the lost character in this episode. Initially, Floorboard Larry was meant to receive some mail from SpongeBob, and it was him who was flickering the lights. But the appeal of the character was not seen, causing him to be cut from the final episode. While Floorboard Larry was deleted from the episode, the same was about to happen to Krabs' parents in the episode Clams. Mr. Krabs is known for his obsession with money, and this episode was a highlight as he finally earned his millionth dollar. But the plotline was initially supposed to deal with death. The episode starts with a customer, under SpongeBob's suggestion, ordering coral bits for just $1. Then Mr. Krabs excitedly announces that this particular dollar is his millionth one earned. And after congratulating and thanking SpongeBob and Squidward, he says that they're going on a surprise trip to celebrate. Squidward guesses that they'll be going to special places, such as Fancy Springs, Palmer Island, or Bikini Bottom Folk Village. To Squidward's dismay, however, they go clam fishing in a boat called the SS Cheapskate on a smelly lagoon. While fishing, SpongeBob accidentally hooks the back of Mr. Krabs' pants, which he has taped the millionth dollar to, and rips it off. Once the dollar is thrown into the lagoon, the trio is warned about a giant clam that lives down there. SpongeBob frantically reels the dollar back on the boat, and for a few seconds, Mr. Krabs is happy that the dollar is safe. But nothing could have prepared him for what was going to happen next, as a giant blue-lipped clam suddenly jumps out of the lagoon, grabbed the dollar from Mr. Krabs' claws, and swam away. Krabs cries to Squidward, who agrees to get it back just to make him stop whining. The trio prepares a lookout, equipped with the necessary supplies. After 3 days, the clam is still not returned. SpongeBob and Squidward have grown tired of waiting, so they try to fool Mr. Krabs by giving him an ordinary dollar out of Squidward's wallet. The dollar was all crumpled up, torn slightly, and soaked in the lagoon, and kissed up with coral blue 3 semi-gloss lipstick that SpongeBob used. Mr. Krabs sees through their scheme and states that he will give a sandwich to whoever retrieves the dollar. He goes as far as to toss the other sandwiches and the entire fridge into the lagoon, making the sandwich the only piece of food on board. Squidward and SpongeBob realizes that their boss has gone mad and try to escape, only for Mr. Krabs to catch them and use them as live bait for the clam. clam. The clam finally takes the bait and advances towards the boat with Mr. Krabs' dollar lying on its tongue. Mr. Krabs jumps onto the clam's tongue and grabs the dollar, only for the clam to shut it in its mouth and dive back into the lagoon. SpongeBob and Squidward panic until Mr. Krabs' head pops out of the lagoon. He reveals that he and the clam fought until Mr. Krabs agreed to trade his entire body. The only parts left of him were his head and his left arm to hold the dollar. But 2 characters were added to the episode. In the original run, Krabs' parents were never meant to exist, being depicted as dead instead. But the production team later scrapped this idea, as really young audiences might not have been taught about death, leading them to ask these questions too early. His parents aired with the names Victor and Betsy Krabs. Speaking of death, Squidward's surgery scene in Dying for Pie can hardly be forgotten. In this episode, Squidward thinks that SpongeBob is gonna blow up and spends a lot of time with him in a pretty wholesome way. But that doesn't mean that this episode was all innocent, as one of the scenes had to be edited for being too gross. The episode starts with Squidward's hatred for SpongeBob. He comes into the Krusty Krab only to find out that it's Employee Brotherhood Day, a day on which all employees must exchange gifts that they've made for themselves. For his gift to Squidward, SpongeBob presents him with a sweater made out of his own eyelashes. Squidward rejects it, which makes SpongeBob cry, eventually leading to this scene.
Is this any better, Squidward? I made this one with my tears.
Squidward, wishing he could simply buy a gift instead of spending time making one, finds a group of pirates outside with a sack of pies. The pirates claim that these pies were bombs, but Squidward does not care and buys it. He then presents his supposedly homemade pie to Mr. Krabs, who gives it a taste test. He breaks off a tiny bit of the crust and goes to get milk. Tripping on his way, the crumb of pie explodes on contact and wrecks the back of the Krusty Krab, blasting Squidward and Mr. Krabs in the process. While Mr. Krabs believes it to be a purposeful attempt on his life, Squidward confesses that he bought the pie, ignorant of its content. Back in Mr. Krabs' office, SpongeBob discovers the pie that Squidward had bought for him, not noticing the huge hole. They rush back, only to find that SpongeBob apparently ate the pie. Mr. Krabs is disgusted at Squidward for his act, and accuses him of killing SpongeBob after all the nice things that SpongeBob has done for him. Having seen the situation play out 11 times prior, he further explains that the pie will explode upon reaching SpongeBob's lower intestine. He then predicts that SpongeBob only has until sunset to live before the bomb hits the explosion point, and says that he should enjoy his final hours. Being truly remorseful for his actions, Squidward decides to come up with a plan to make SpongeBob's remaining hours the most fun he's ever had. So he asks him what he wants to do the most. SpongeBob presents him with an extensive list of exactly that. He calls it his friendship list. This presents them with the exact bucket list that SpongeBob had. To make up for what he did, Squidward reenacts every single one of them, including having his chest open to let SpongeBob poke at his heart. The final activity SpongeBob planned is watching the sunset with Squidward. Remembering Mr. Krabs' warning about SpongeBob's death, Squidward nervously agrees to participate. He then builds a brick wall between them so that he won't see the explosion during the sunset. But as it turns out, SpongeBob had been saving the pie to share together and accidentally triggers the bomb. This explodes the entirety of Bikini Bottom in a nuclear explosion. So much for trying to censor firearms in SpongeBob. As if this episode didn't already deal with explosions, the scene where SpongeBob opens Squidward's chest was supposedly supposed to play out differently. Originally, SpongeBob was supposed to say, "Who's the doctor here? Me or you?" The last part is important, as when his blood ruptures from Squidward's heart, SpongeBob plugs it up nervously with his hand. But this seemed to encourage the kids to try this at home, and so the edited version aired in the final cut. Speaking of doing questionable things for fun, this episode took fun to a whole other level, with the episode literally being called fun. The episode begins with business as usual at the Krusty Krab, until suddenly an alarm begins to blare, signaling an attempt by Plankton to steal a Krabby Patty. Plankton, Patty in tow, escapes outside by making a huge hole in the door with a laser. SpongeBob chases after him, and after a long chase across Bikini Bottom, SpongeBob finally recovers the Krabby Patty and is congratulated by the townsfolk. While Plankton walks home downcast, SpongeBob, feeling sorry for Plankton, decides to befriend befriend him. SpongeBob invites Plankton to go jellyfishing with him. Realizing that he can take advantage of SpongeBob, Plankton plays along. With encouragement from his wife Karen, at Jellyfish Fields, Plankton remains fixated on evil and destruction, while SpongeBob tries to explain fun to him by singing a song.
F is for friends who do stuff together. U is for you and me.
Plankton then seems to forget about stealing the formula and begins to develop a genuine sense of friendship. When Mr. Krabs sees this, he refuses to believe that Plankton has changed and sets up a trap for him the next day. He attempts to tempt Plankton with a Krabby Patty, but Plankton sits motionlessly with the patty in front of him. After SpongeBob and Plankton leave to go to the movies, Mr. Krabs begins to suspect that Plankton has gone straight and nice, until he realizes that he actually did take the patty. In an attempt to prove Mr. Krabs wrong, SpongeBob reaches into Plankton's pockets, only to find a Krabby Patty. Plankton attempts to explain that he realizes now that he only ever wanted friendship, before admitting to everything and running off with the patty through the movie screen, tearing it in half in the process. He is eventually caught, as there was only a concrete wall behind the screen as the episode closes. But in the original episode, there were a few dialogues that changed the nature of the story. In the jellyfishing scene, Plankton initially pointed his gun and said the line,
What happens after we
shoot them?
SpongeBob is clearly disturbed as he says that. The reason for deleting the scene is obvious enough. SpongeBob's team are well aware that references to violence are not received well in the show. While this was understandable, the next one deleted is a unique theme song. In the episode, Whatever Happened to SpongeBob? The episode starts with SpongeBob walking up and greeting the mailman, but this simple gesture proves to be dangerous, as a truck runs him over. This alters SpongeBob's personality, causing him to be more clumsy. After a series of accidents around his friends, he is cast out after being called Idiot Boy. This causes him to feel guilty and prepare to leave Bikini Bottom for good. This journey is hard on him, and in one instance, he hits his head, causing amnesia. His friends are back at home to organize a whole search plan for the sponge. Meanwhile, SpongeBob wanders into New Kelp City, where he attempts to get a job. However, each time he gets a job, SpongeBob uses his bubble blowing skills to get him, resulting in him being fired. Back in Bikini Bottom, Sandy shows her friends her new invention that can track SpongeBob, the Sponge Tracker. Squidward, not wanting SpongeBob to come back, purposefully destroys the device with a hammer, claiming he dropped it. Krabs, in a desperate move, buys Squidward's loyalty by offering him a jeweled Forbay egg as a retirement gift, which would complete his collection. In Kelp City, things are taking a different turn, as SpongeBob's bubble blowing skills trapped a local gang, earning him the mayor position. His friends finally find him, but SpongeBob now calls himself Cheesehead Brown Pants. They also realize that he has amnesia and doesn't remember any of them. They bring SpongeBob back to Bikini Bottom, where SpongeBob is surprised at his previous life. His memory is finally restored when the Forbay egg falls on his head. The episode ends with SpongeBob realizing he's no longer welcome at Kelp City. He decides to stay in Bikini Bottom forever, much to Squidward's dismay. To keep up with the theme of the plotline, the episode initially had a very different theme song. Instead of the iconic one, it was called Who Bob What Pants, and it went like this.
Who Bob What Pants? Who Bob What Pants?
But it's assumed that this was removed for fear that it would mess with the brand, and so it never made the final cut. Well, weird things are expected out of SpongeBob. When Mr. Krabs tried to intimidate him, it led to the biggest controversy in SpongeBob history. In the episode Midlife Crustacean, the episode starts with Mr. Krabs feeling old as he struggles to get out of his hammock bed. He goes into his kitchen to find that Pearl has made him breakfast, and to make matters worse, she forces a huge pill down his throat. It continues to follow him everywhere he goes. Getting fed up, Krabs decides to join SpongeBob and Patrick in their antics to get back his youth. He even does the cool guy handshake and gets ready for a big night out together. At 8:01 p.m., SpongeBob and Patrick arrive at Mr. Krabs' house as a part of their fashionably late promise. Ready for the big night out, the scene then changes to them doing many other bizarre activities in various settings, such as at this highway, laundromat, dentist, roof redoing, and a game of Dungeons and Dragons in Old England, and the library, none of which have yet succeeded in remotely amusing Krabs. Krabs gets visibly more and more frustrated. At his breaking point, he angrily decides to cancel the night and go home, but Patrick tries to change his mind by saying that he will miss out on the pantry raid. This was an occurrence in which the trio will be invading a woman's house to steal her underpants. This changes Krabs' mind, and he agrees to go along. SpongeBob, Patrick, and Mr. Krabs arrive at a house and are successful in obtaining an unspecified woman's underwear. However, they are caught red-handed when the woman turns on the light and catches the boys in the middle of the act, revealing her to be Mr. Krabs' mother. As a result, Mr. Krabs is grounded for the remainder of the night and sent to his room. SpongeBob apologizes for what happened, but Mr. Krabs forgives him, as being in his old bedroom made him feel younger, finally getting his wish. It's easy to see why this episode got banned, and the idea of the three boys breaking into a woman's house to steal her underwear is hardly what SpongeBob is trying to teach. Fortunately for everyone, Nickelodeon buried this episode as best as they could. Now, that was every deleted scene in SpongeBob. If you liked this video, be sure to smash the subscribe button down below for more. This is one of Plankton's many attempts to steal the secret formula.
About any second now.
And this is what happens every time Krabs catches him. But no matter how many times Mr. Krabs throws him out, Plankton never seems to learn his lesson. So today, I'm gonna look over every time that Plankton stole the Krabby Patty secret formula and rank how close he got on each attempt, from plans that suck to taking over the entirety of Bikini Bottom. Starting with the time that Plankton tried to use Mr. Krabs' only family member against him. In the episode, Plankton's Intern, Plankton is a functional member of society, only when Karen is around. But on this faithful day, she decided to go see her motherboard. To fill her spot, she put out a help wanted sign for an intern. Many people apply, but quickly leave when they realize that Plankton wanted to pay them sub-minimum wage.
As an intern, you will gain valuable work experience at a sub-minimum wage.
The only one left was Pearl, Mr. Krabs' daughter. Even though Plankton is deathly afraid of whales, he realized that Pearl was the only one actually willing to work for him and hired her. When she came home after her first day, Krabs thought that he was teaching his daughter a good lesson and accidentally dug his own grave. He teaches her that a good employee follows the boss's orders, but this would be the beginning of Mr. Krabs' worst nightmare. Pearl went to Plankton the next day and promptly told him that she could get him the secret formula. That's when Plankton realized that Pearl was Mr. Krabs' daughter and hatched a plan to steal the formula. Pearl then helps Plankton break into the Krusty Krab, but they find SpongeBob sleep cooking. Thinking they evaded him, they went into the office, but SpongeBob had already called Mr. Krabs. In the meantime, Pearl uses the combination to get the formula out of the safe, but before she could give it to Plankton, Krabs shows up. Pearl literally waves the formula in front of Plankton as she explains everything that happened to her dad, and she ends up leveraging the situation to get triple allowance in exchange for the formula. So close, yet so far for Plankton. Speaking of using family members, Plankton's grandma had a similar idea in Grandmom's The Word. In this episode, Plankton had promised his grandma that he would own the Krusty Krab by her 90th birthday, and that birthday was the next day. She calls him up and pressures Plankton into lying that he had succeeded. This is when he decides to turn to SpongeBob to help convince Mr. Krabs to fool his grandma. Mr. Krabs swallows the secret formula bottle to keep it safe for the next 8 hours and orders everyone to pull off the perfect plan: make the restaurant Plankton themed. Plankton's grandmother arrives and falls for the plan, truly believing that Plankton was the owner. She even starts having a crush on Squidward.
Oh my goodness! Who is this handsome young man?
But things started getting wrong when she started to leave, and as a last birthday wish, she requests to see the Krabby Patty secret formula. Krabs gives in, hands Plankton's grandmother the bottle, and they take pictures. But without a warning, the grandmother spouted a jetpack and took off. Plankton thinks that he will share the success with his granny, but she betrays him and kicks him away. Luckily, it was easy to get the formula back, as she fell asleep with it. And Squidward's love stories that we just mentioned brings me into this next episode, where Plankton had an interesting attempt to get the formula. And This is in the flower pot. Right at the start of the episode, he pretends that he wants to see the world with Karen, and so is moving away from the chum bucket. Krabs doesn't believe him, but Plankton's house is demolished in front of his eyes. They celebrate and soon realize that it has been replaced with another store, the Flower Pot Florist. Krabs runs to have a good relationship with the owner, not wanting a repeat of Plankton. He meets Petunia and doesn't realize that it was Plankton in a disguise. SpongeBob leaves the store and Squidward falls in love with the owner. Plankton plays his role well and really gets into being a florist with his slogan, "Power to the flower." But Plankton is Plankton and sells exploding flowers in disguise to Mr. Krabs. But before that plan goes into action, Plankton realizes that being a florist is now his new dream and runs to collect flowers back from the Krusty Krab before they explode. With a minute left, he almost succeeds, but is interrupted by Squidward, who professes his love. The flowers explode, exploding Plankton and making the end of his florist dreams. I think this was initially an attempt to get the secret formula, but this just backfired. While Plankton tried to create art with flowers, he would steal an art piece for the formula in the episode Fiasco. The episode begins with Mr. Krabs and SpongeBob trying to create a commercial for the Krusty Krab, but their ideas don't seem to be good, leaving both of them depressed. Squidward then watches a customer destroy a set of Krabby Patties and exclaims that it was an art style of a famous artist called Fiasco. Although initially Krabs planned to throw it away, he saw this as an opportunity to make money, and so tried to take the artwork from Squidward. They argue over who really owns it, but Farfael Brandbridge, an art evaluator, comes in and declares the work to be authentic. This makes the piece a national treasure, meaning that neither Mr. Krabs nor Squidward owns it. Mr. Krabs allows people to view it in his restaurant for free, provided they each order 2 Krabby Patties each. Later, Plankton sees this artwork and mistakes it for garbage. Planning to reverse engineer the recipe, he steals it. Police officers immediately chase him and dog him in every step of the way. When he inevitably loses, he is baffled as to why the police are chasing him.
What's with the police? It's just a bag of garbage.
Plankton then goes to SpongeBob's house and demands an explanation as to why the police are after him. SpongeBob then explains what he stole is in fact a priceless work of art, which gives Plankton the idea to sell the art piece and declares SpongeBob and Gary as accomplices to his crime. Enraged by these accusations, SpongeBob confronts Plankton about this, and as they start to argue, Patrick suddenly barges in, clearly chewing something. It's revealed that he ate the artwork, which he mistook for
a fiasco.
Much to SpongeBob and Plankton's horror, even after evading the people after them, Plankton loses the formula thanks to Patrick's stupidity. Speaking of the cops, we can't forget the time that Plankton was arrested for stealing the formula in the episode Call the Cops. The episode begins with Plankton getting chased around by Krabs and SpongeBob with the formula in his hands. He's caught by a police officer who arrests him for stealing, claiming that no one is innocent. The formula becomes evidence as the officer takes it and Plankton away. Without the formula, the patties would have to be made with just chum, which makes everyone leave. Ironically, to take drastic measures, Krabs and SpongeBob go to the department to steal the formula back. Plankton gets another shot at stealing the formula by tricking Patrick, his cellmate, but both him and Krabs arrive at the same time and they fight it out. In the end, Plankton, Krabs, SpongeBob, and Patrick all get arrested, and the episode leaves Plankton still formula-less. Even future employees of the Krusty Krab must be warned about Plankton. And that brings us to the training video. This episode traces Mr. Krab's success with the Krusty Krab as well as all the information for new employees and what they'll need. It has 7 parts, from humble beginning, the Krusty Krab today, training, personal hygiene, your workstation, interfacing with your boss, and finally, emergency situation. The last part is particularly for what to do when Plankton tries to steal the formula. In it, Plankton has fitted a Krabby Patty with robotic legs, making it look like a spider. He then rides it and tries to get out of the Krusty Krab, but the robot is just not fast enough and Plankton once again is launched out of the Krusty Krab. But you see, Call the Cops wasn't the only time Plankton was arrested, and we can see this in the episode Jailbreak. The episode begins with the narrator explaining the Bikini Bottom jail, mainly its newest member, Plankton.
And currently of that little miscreant, Plankton.
known as prison number 655321. The warden lets all the prisoners out, including Plankton, and he hears SpongeBob calling him out, who wants to know why he is present. SpongeBob explains that he was secretly hired by Mr. Krabs to secretly work at the jail every weekend in order to watch over Plankton, as another job in the Krusty Krab. Plankton, though, does not like that idea, but the prison warden tells him to quiet down. Hilariously, though, he turns out to be quite the fan favorite among the criminals, who all rally behind him. Obviously, in true Plankton fashion, he hatches a plan to get the formula, but SpongeBob overhears their plan and reports it to Mr. Krabs. In the meantime, Plankton helps everyone escape jail, and they go to the Krusty Krab. SpongeBob notices Plankton and all of his cellmates preparing to invade the restaurant, but Mr. Krabs says that they are ready for them. Plankton yells out to his cellmates to bring him the formula, and they begin breaking down the door while using a whale cellmate as a battering ram. They successfully break in, and the whale prisoner opens the safe. Mr. Krabs urges Plankton not to get it, but he doesn't listen. As Plankton heads towards the formula, the curtain rises, and the entire Bikini Bottom police force emerges from it. Mr. Krabs reveals that he knew of Plankton's attempted break-in, and had enough time to hide the entire police force in his safe. The police force then takes Plankton and the rest of his cellmates back to jail, but somehow Plankton is honored as the entire Krusty Krab falls apart at the end of the episode. But now, let's go way back for a minute to the first season of the show, in an episode called Culture Shock. In this episode, the famous Krusty Krab no longer is famous, with profits being down way too much that month. To counter this, Squidward proposes hosting a talent show, with him as the host.
No, wait! A talent show with your host, me.
Though he just wanted to make himself a star. He manages to convince Mr. Krabs, and later that evening, the Krusty Krab is packed. Among the audience attending the show are Patrick and SpongeBob's parents. Among the acts of SpongeBob, Gary, and Pearl comes Plankton, being a magician called the Amazing Plankton. He plans to make a Krabby Patty disappear before the audience's eyes, but of course, he tries to run off with Patty. Much to Krabs' dismay, he catches him and takes the Patty back, but at least this time, Plankton is allowed to leave with his dignity intact. In this next one, Plankton would have gotten the formula, had it not backfired on him. In the episode The Krusty Bucket, Plankton is seen stealing Krabs' hair, as he gets a hair sample from Mr. Krabs while he's showering. He then races back to the chum bucket, where he combines the sample with one of his antennae to create the SpongeBob version of Frankenstein, Plank Krab. Plank Krab already had created a plan to steal the formula, and ends up gaining control of the entire restaurant due to his hearty handshake. He uses the handshake on Plankton too, tricking him and kicking him out of the restaurant, horrifying them both. Inside, Plank Krab runs everything perfectly, and not being able to handle it, the two former bosses team up. After multiple failed attempts, they give up and apply to be managers at the new Krusty Bucket, but Plank Krab makes them managers of the bathroom. They fight while doing their jobs, and this makes Plank Krab so angry that he split. The two sides of Plank Krab shake hands in order to have a clean fight, and both melt from how good their handshake is. It was an amazing plan, if I do say so myself, but sadly, Plank Krab's reign ended without Plankton knowing the formula. Speaking of Krabs and Plankton teaming up, this next episode almost gave Plankton the formula for the exact same reason, in the Chum Caverns. The episode begins with Mr. Krabs tripping on a loose floorboard in his office. He uncovers it to reveal the secret formula. Plankton this whole time had been watching it from a long telescope that reached into Mr. Krabs' office, and went to get it by caving underground. But he ends up getting trapped in a cave with beautiful scenery. Recognizing the business opportunity, Plankton planned to set up his restaurant at this location, drawing customers with the heavenly environment. At that moment, cave dwellers appear, but Plankton tames them with his whip, making them his new employees. Later that day, Mr. Krabs discovers that Plankton has more customers by his cave, and decides to go down there to try to sell Krabby Patties. Plankton is mad about this though, and decides to get his revenge by trapping Mr. Krabs underground. The two end up fighting to get each other trapped. They end up both getting stuck though, and regret their pointless feud. The pair decide to work together if they ever get out, and soon SpongeBob comes to save them. But here's where Plankton kills his his chance on his own. Plankton goes back on his word to travel above ground to steal the secret formula, but when he reaches it, the hole he created causes a chain reaction that causes him to fall back down. Only if he could have kept his promise. But that wasn't the only time that Krabs was sweet to Plankton, as seen in the episode Truth or Square. This episode is one of the biggest celebrations for the Krusty Krab. It's 117th anniversary. SpongeBob arrives at the Krusty Krab, where Mr. Krabs reminds them to keep a close eye on all the doors and entrances, including the air vents. He explains that SpongeBob needs to make sure that Plankton does not sneak in during the 117th year anniversary celebration. Meanwhile, at the Chum Bucket, Plankton spoke with Karen about how he's been a failure for 50 years of business, while Mr. Krabs has been nothing but successful. In order to redeem himself and finally get his hands on the Krabby Patty secret formula, Plankton decides that he'll sneak into the Krusty Krab, while the employees and Mr. Krabs are distracted by the festivities, and steal the formula. The Krusty crew go into the freezer to get one last decoration for the celebration, and promptly are locked in. When they finally make it out through the air vents, SpongeBob brings the customer back with a song.
Oh, Krusty Krab, oh, Krusty Krab.
In the meantime, Plankton sees that the Krusty Krab is empty, giving him the perfect getaway with the formula. But he gets thrown around as hungry customers fill the restaurant. But in the chaos, he's unfortunately caught by Mr. Krabs. Mentioning that he was in a good mood, Krabs agrees to not launch him out, and instead blows him into a balloon, kicking him out that way. This next one, though, was strange, as the formula was not kept in its usual safe, but instead in a safety deposit box in the episode The Great Patty Capper. The episode starts with the curtains opening to SpongeBob going into the Krusty Krab freezer and finding out they've ran out of Krabby Patties. So he and Mr. Krabs try to make more, but cannot remember the recipe. So Mr. Krabs gives SpongeBob the key to the vault in which the recipe is hidden, and he, along with Patrick, board a train to the bank for the safety deposit box. Sometime during this ride, the key to the box is stolen, and SpongeBob and Patrick must find the thief. It's later revealed that Plankton does indeed have the key. SpongeBob and Patrick chase Plankton through a wild goose chase, the coaches, the Tinder, and the locomotive, before Plankton separates the train by disconnecting everything, leaving the duo in its cabin. As the two try to stop the train, Patrick suddenly breaks its brake, causing it to go out of control. This whole situation stalls the chase, letting Plankton get the formula. He is caught by Krabs, but still manages to get away from him. Just as he thought that he held the world in his hands, Plankton is stopped by the train crashing into the wall next to him and getting squashed underneath. So much for the greatest chase in the show. But all of this doesn't mean that Plankton does not care about his business. As seen in the episode Bucket Sweet Bucket, in the beginning of the episode, Plankton is tired of the Chum Bucket's lack of business, so he attempts to remodel it and fails due to his size. Hatching a plan, he gets SpongeBob and Patrick to help remodel, and soon he realizes that they have both done everything wrong and breaks down sobbing about his failure. Considering SpongeBob and Patrick's heart, this only attracts their loyalty towards him to make the Chum Bucket a success. Soon after seeing their progress, Squidward criticizes them and tells them that they are not painting correctly. He joins in and paints different, unexpected art on the front of the restaurant, and when Squidward officially joins the team, Plankton only makes his sob story sound worse, which causes them to start replacing every part of the Chum Bucket with parts from the Krusty Krab, which leads Plankton to slide into the safe and get his hands on the formula, only to discover that Krabs had replaced it with a to-do list. The real formula was inside Mr. Krabs, who had gone on vacation and took his most prized possession with him. Once again, Plankton went through all that trouble for literally nothing. But let's not forget about the time that Plankton accidentally helped someone else steal the secret formula. His actions in the Sponge Out of Water movie is what really set the whole movie's plot in motion. Right at the beginning, once the introductions were given, Plankton flies in and drops a jar of tartar sauce on the Krusty Krab, calling himself Air Plankton, and the Krusty Krab crew then becomes soldiers. A food fight ensues. Plankton crashes but comes back with a tank instead. When the crew defeats the tank as well, Plankton raises up in a 12-foot tall robot of himself, with him being the pilot of this ginormous thing. He uses this to smash into the restaurant, but quickly runs out of gas. But that doesn't mean that he ran out of ideas. Tricking Krabs Krabs into taking what he claims was his last cent. Turns out he actually hid himself inside it. Once in the safe, he gets his hands on the formula, but in the process, he triggers the lockdown sequence that Mr. Krabs had within his safe. SpongeBob and Plankton fight over the formula, with Krabs being locked outside his own restaurant, but suddenly, the formula vanishes, having been stolen by Burger Beard, a pirate. It caught everyone by surprise, including Plankton, who after all of this, who still remained without the formula, even after the gang manages to get it back at the end of the movie. But let's go back to the first season again, to one of the first times that Plankton actually got away with getting the formula. The episode starts with the Krusty Krab going on lockdown, as Plankton stole a Krabby Patty by cutting a hole in the wall. He actually manages to get away, and SpongeBob is tasked with finding him. He chases him all over Bikini Bottom, even flying on one instance. Plankton then manipulates SpongeBob by giving back the secret formula and a sob story to go along with it. SpongeBob feels bad for him, however, and befriends him, truly believing that he's changed. Krabs, however, isn't so easily fooled, and while the duo is at the movies, he tells SpongeBob to check Plankton's pockets. Of course, he finds a Krabby Patty, and after trying to keep up his sob story, Plankton grabs the Krabby Patty again and tries to run away through the screen at the theater. It's implied he got away, that is, until Mr. Krabs opens the screen and reveals that there are only concrete walls behind them. Plankton is smashed against the wall, along with his beloved Krabby Patty beside him. By now, everyone knows that there has been a feud between Mr. Krabs and Plankton for decades, and the show finally decided to give us some lore in the episode Friend or Foe. And right off the bat, the episode starts with Plankton strolling into the Krusty Krab in a cape. He makes balloons pop around him as he launches the lower half of the cake onto the safe. It explodes, giving Plankton free access to the formula. He gets it and tries to escape on a small rocket off the cake, but SpongeBob catches him just in time, spraying him with condiments. This instance prompts Krabs to tell everyone the story of him and Plankton. He reveals that they were once best friends when they were babies.
There was a time when Plankton and I were best friends.
Until grade school, the other kids picked on Plankton, and when Mr. Krabs tried to stand up for his friend, they would pick on him too. See, Mr. Krabs grew up poor, not having any money. He literally had to wear rags to school, but when he discovered money, it became an instant obsession. But even then, Krabs spent it on Plankton. When Krabs cuts to the present, SpongeBob reveals that he actually got back the formula while Krabs was telling the story. Turns out, the duo poisoned their first customer and fought over the recipe, sparking the war between them that will entertain generations. In the end, Plankton only got a piece of the formula, which said a pinch of chum. This ultimately led him to make the chum bucket as it is today. Plankton did try to replicate the recipe, but failed miserably, causing him to chase the formula from that point forward. It all led to the making of this video. So if you're liking it so far, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Aaron causes the duo to reminisce about their friendship. They hug, but it was yet another ploy from Plankton to steal the formula. Technically, the episode ends with Plankton having the formula, but it's heavily implied that he lost it at some point. While Plankton tried to renovate the chum bucket in the last one, Krabs tried to renovate the Krabby Patty in Goodbye Krabby Patty. The episode starts with SpongeBob coming up with the idea to sell frozen patties for their convenience. Krabs steals the idea, calling it the Frozen Krabby Patty. The new face of the frozen Krabby Patties ends up being Patrick, and the patties get more filler to create more profit. The enormous success of this product causes Mr. Krabs to fire SpongeBob from his fry cook job, and immediately rehires him to work at the Krusty Krab Museum. This museum documents the complete history of the Krusty Krab, complete with animatronic versions of the employees and merchandise, which includes the frozen Krabby Patties themselves. Later on, Plankton comes by and tries to take the formula, but he's confused when the bored SpongeBob doesn't do anything to try to stop him. SpongeBob tells him that there is no point in stopping him, because all the formulas in the restaurant are blank souvenirs. Plankton then asks for a frozen Krabby Patty, which SpongeBob nonchalantly gives. Plankton then runs off with the frozen patty. However, Plankton doesn't realize that the patties are made of sand, which was the filler that Krabs used to get even more profit. Even though this was one of his most successful schemes, it unfortunately unfortunately did not end up well for him. But even that previous one pales in comparison to the time that Mr. Krabs offers to sell the formula to Plankton. The episode follows the construction of a highway called Shelly's Superhighway, which SpongeBob is against because it's set to go right through jellyfish fields. SpongeBob is conflicted on whether this would be a good thing or a bad thing, but what he doesn't realize is that the road goes over the Krusty Krab, right to the chum bucket, as per Plankton's plans. Despite SpongeBob and Patrick's best efforts, the superhighway is unfortunately built. It destroys Krabs' business, with no one even having entry access to the once famous restaurant. Defeated, Mr. Krabs says that he will initiate Plan Z9er, which involves him giving away the formula to Plankton and closing the Krusty Krab forever. Just as Krabs is about to sell the formula to Plankton, the jellyfish invade the chum bucket, causing Mr. Krabs to flee as Plankton is grabbed and stung by the angry jellyfish. The jellyfish continue to attack the city for 3 whole days, and the news continuously broadcasts coverage about it. Seeing an opportunity, SpongeBob uses this chance to convince the Bikini Bottomites to destroy the highway and restore jellyfish fields. The plan works, and the superhighway is destroyed, along with Plankton's plans. Poor guy. But that somehow wasn't the only time that Krabs wanted to sell the secret formula to Plankton, and it somehow gets even worse in the episode called Hankering. The episode begins with Mr. Krabs' stomach growling as one of the customers of the Krusty Krab starts to get worried. He closes the restaurant and goes somewhere by going under a taxi, while SpongeBob follows him to give him a nickel that he dropped. It turns out that Mr. Krabs has gone outside of the Bikini Bottom to the Slop Pail, where he orders chum. SpongeBob sees that Mr. Krabs is eating chum and likes it, but he does not understand why. Mr. Krabs tells him a story about how during one of his Navy days, he was forced to eat chum due to it being the only food left, and upon eating it, he grew to love it. SpongeBob promises to keep this a secret, and afterwards, the Slop Pail closes as the owner of the restaurant, Sal, wants to become a movie star. This leaves Mr. Krabs with no chum to eat other than from the chum bucket. After multiple failed attempts to get it, he gives up and goes to Plankton, who promised him a lifetime of chum in exchange for the formula. When Plankton takes the formula, he uses the chum bucket glove to prevent Mr. Krabs from taking his chum. However, Mr. Krabs gets out and attacks him, causing the formula to sink into the chum. Plankton then decides to swim inside of the chum to obtain the formula, but SpongeBob has a better idea and tells Mr. Krabs that he should eat all the chum so he can reach the formula first. Mr. Krabs follows through with this plan and ends up getting the formula, but in the process, he becomes extremely overweight, and this also causes him to lose his decades-long appetite for chum, and even accidentally eats Plankton. But now, let's go to the time where Mr. Krabs completely lost his grip on reality, in the episode Plankton Paranoia, and it flips the usual formula on its head. Instead of Plankton plotting against Krabs, it's Krabs who starts plotting against Plankton, or at least the Plankton that he thinks he sees everywhere. The episode opens at the Krusty Krab, where Mr. Krabs rallies SpongeBob and Squidward for Plankton's daily attempt at stealing the Krabby Patty secret formula. SpongeBob is assigned to guard the door, while Squidward naps, but after 3 hours, Plankton never arrives. The silence rattles Krabs, who begins to see Plankton in every shadow. The next day, Krabs' paranoia spirals. He bans pockets, uses a reef blower to strip clothes from customers, and even accuses Old Man Walker of smuggling patties under his hat. Soon, he's banning mothers with babies and driving away the entire lunch rush. Eventually, he boards up the restaurant, fires SpongeBob, Squidward, and Sandy, and sets up the place with traps, convinced everyone is secretly working for Plankton. Later that night, Krabs hides under the register boat with the formula strapped to his neck. He hallucinates cups, eyeballs, and even his own reflection transforming into demonic Planktons, including a giant horned monster version. Things hit a breaking point when he sees SpongeBob, Squidward, Patrick, Pearl, Mrs. Puff, and Old Man Jenkins sneaking into the chum bucket, which convinces him his entire world has betrayed him. Moments later, SpongeBob knocks on the door, claiming Plankton had kidnapped Squidward. Pretending to help, Krabs secretly cooks booby-trapped Krabby Patties filled with spikes and fireworks. Together, he and SpongeBob head to the chum bucket, where Plankton reveals Squidward is tied up, only to press a button that unleashes decorations and confetti. It's actually a surprise party celebrating the anniversary of Plankton's first ever formula heist. Krabs is touched and reluctantly enjoys the party with everyone else, but when the guests leave, Plankton finds the formula left behind, only to discover it's strapped to a stick of dynamite. The chum bucket explodes in the final gag, with Krabs' paranoia coming full circle. Now, everyone knows that Karen is an amazing wife to Plankton, while he, on the other hand, is a complete jerk to her, and this would ultimately cost him one of the closest times he's ever gotten to the real formula, in the episode Single Cell Anniversary. In this episode, Plankton learns that it was his and Karen's wedding anniversary, and that Karen got him a copy of the Krabby Patty secret formula for his present, but he still couldn't have it until he returns a favor and gets her a present. Plankton then teams up with SpongeBob and Patrick to learn a serenade for Karen as a present. Plankton walks into the chum bucket and starts singing the song,
Oh, my Karen.
Karen cries when it's over, and then starts uploading the Krabby Patty secret formula. Plankton then tells SpongeBob that by wooing his computer wife, he has doomed the Krusty Krab and put that said restaurant in grave peril. SpongeBob is shocked at this, so he unplugs what he thinks is Karen, but is really just the coffee maker. Karen finally uploads the formula, but she starts crying again. This causes her to break down and short out, leaving Plankton still without the secret formula, making him confused. She then shuts down, and the EMILP, Emergency Mother-in-Law Program, uploads and starts nagging, saying that Karen should have married an ATM. If only Plankton was a better husband. SpongeBob is perhaps the most loyal employee who protects the formula, with his heart and soul. But even he helped Plankton get the formula in the episode Surf and Turf. The episode starts with Sandy in her tree dome, making a ship in a bottle. She tests the cannons, only to have the ship in the bottle get destroyed. She throws it out, while SpongeBob comes in, drinking the bottle, complimenting on how it was what he needed. Sandy tells him how she's in a desperate situation for a ship in a bottle contest tomorrow. Wanting to help his best friend, SpongeBob takes out the formula from inside of him, throws out the paper, and gives the bottle to Sandy. However, SpongeBob realizes his mistake, goes to an airport nearby, gets on the plane, onto a cable car, into a devilish mountain. Inside is Plankton with the formula, but unfortunately, SpongeBob takes back the formula and goes back to the tree dome. Never knew Plankton had a house on a devil mountain, but even that doesn't help Plankton. Now, let's go back to Plankton's own plans, and we're gonna look at one of his most elaborate plans in the episode Inside Job. In the beginning of the episode, Plankton tries to steal the Krabby Patty secret formula by Karen launching him into Mr. Krabs' brain, but he ends up accidentally going into SpongeBob's brain instead. Plankton goes into the optical system to see how to make Krabby Patties, but SpongeBob cannot see because of Plankton and uses inedible cleaning utensils as ingredients. Plankton does not realize this until he decides to go to the audio system and listen to the formula, restoring SpongeBob's sight. SpongeBob then is horrified at his inedible creation and thinks he forgot how to make a Krabby Patty, so he asks Mr. Krabs to tell him the secret formula again. But by the time he gets in front of him, Plankton is already using SpongeBob's eardrums, so SpongeBob cannot hear Mr. Krabs, and so Krabs uses a megaphone to help, which blows Plankton away. Plankton then tries to go to the command central, or the brain, to learn about the formula. He looks at SpongeBob's secrets and finds that the formula is in his heart. He slides down the vertebrae to get down there, and when he sucks the information out of SpongeBob's heart, he turns into a clone of him. That's right, Plankton becomes SpongeBob, from appearance to personality, while maintaining his own voice and single eye style. Even though he knows the formula, now having SpongeBob's personality, he refuses to share it as that would be stealing. Karen then turns his mind-reading hat into a propeller to fly Plankton out of SpongeBob and get back home. But things don't still go right for Plankton, as he accidentally bumps into Patrick on the way home. This turns him into Patrick's clone, and he's unable to tell Karen the recipe as he is now as stupid as Patrick. It really goes to show how much of SpongeBob's personality is actually connected to the formula. But too bad bad for Plankton. Speaking of which, I can't forget about the pineapple invasion episode. In this episode, Plankton gets his hands on the formula twice, but first, he strolled into the Krusty Krab with a skunk named Mr. Stinky. The customers fawn over the skunk, thinking he's a cat, but Plankton intentionally sets Mr. Stinky off by scaring him with a bee. And this doesn't affect Plankton as he doesn't have a nose, but the others are not so lucky. All of the customers, Squidward, SpongeBob, and Mr. Krabs, frantically leave the Krusty Krab due to the sting. Mr. Krabs knows that Plankton is inside of the Krusty Krab alone, and takes one of SpongeBob's arms to use as a nose plug before heading inside. In Mr. Krabs' office, Plankton is surrounding the safe with dynamite, and the detonation reveals that the safe has another safe inside. Before he could get away with the formula, Mr. Krabs crushes Plankton with his fists, and SpongeBob, with one of his own legs plugging his nose, tosses Plankton out the window with a spatula. Worried that he will return, Mr. Krabs wants SpongeBob to take the secret formula home with him, while he makes adjustments to his safe. However, the two of them do not know that Plankton is listening to everything with his severed antenna, and thus, SpongeBob's house becomes Plankton's biggest target. The next morning, SpongeBob talks to Gary, entrusting the safety of the secret formula to him. He has several failed attempts, but doesn't give up. He finally manages to get inside of SpongeBob's house by distracting Gary with a fake cutout of himself out the window. But that doesn't last long, as he gets caught soon after and fights with Gary. Gary beats him up until Plankton escapes into Gary's shell, thinking the secret formula is inside. But he's not left alone in there, as Gary's eyeball chases Plankton through the maze within his shell. When SpongeBob comes home, he is horrified by the condition of his house, but still glad that the secret formula is safe where he left it. Where did he keep the formula? On top of his television in plain sight. Meanwhile, Plankton makes it to the center of the shell and grabs what he thinks is the secret formula, but it's actually just an old grocery list. But in the end, a vet thankfully rescues Plankton from inside of the shell. Perhaps the episode with the most number of attempts in it has to be in Plankton Retires. Right off the bat, Plankton tries 5 different times to get the formula in various ways, but he's always caught by Mr. Krabs, who foils his plans. He finally seems to get fed up with constantly failing, and so unplugs Karen, and SpongeBob follows as he's not convinced that he really did lose his biggest rival. They follow him as he gets a room in a senior home, dressing differently and apparently setting up a new life. Once Plankton figured out that Krabs had been following him, he revealed his evil plan. The Plankton that pair had been following was a robot, and the real Plankton was in the Krusty Krab stealing the formula. The real Plankton blows up the safe again, and just as he was about to get away with it, Mr. Krabs appears and takes it from him. Turns out, Krabs had seen this coming, and had sent robot versions of himself and SpongeBob to Dolesville. Meanwhile, Robot Krabs, Robot SpongeBob, and Robot Plankton are enjoying their holiday time with each other. Though it seemed like a foolproof plan, with extensive thought into it, Krabs is always the one step ahead of the supervillain. Speaking of Plankton's evil intentions, he once made a spatula to do his bidding, in the episode Evil Spatula. The episode begins with Plankton faxing himself to the Krusty Krab, and while Krabs and SpongeBob are busy, Plankton then starts phase 2 by sawing a bit of SpongeBob's spatula, then places it beside the grill. This causes the spatula to be broken when SpongeBob tries to use it. He tries everything to fix it, but Mr. Krabs just tells him to get a new spatula. He then goes to Harvey's Spatula Emporium, where Plankton waits. Plankton then offers SpongeBob his own special spatula with magical powers, which SpongeBob quickly agrees to. They arrive at the Chum Bucket, where Plankton shows off a room full of spatulas and introduces SpongeBob to the majestic Sizzle Master. The spatula has a receiver with the other side being held by Plankton to give off the illusion that the spatula talks. Plankton tries to get put on grill duty while earning SpongeBob's trust, but SpongeBob is really careful about the grill and manages to foil the spatula's plans. It does, however, gain SpongeBob's trust by helping in every aspect of his life. Finally, SpongeBob gives the spatula grill duty, allowing Plankton to execute the next phase of his plan. He intentionally burns the patties and then requests the secret formula to make more. SpongeBob gives in and goes to the safe to get the paper. Krabs stops him as he realizes that it is Plankton behind the spatula and reads out the wrong ingredients disguised as the formula. Plankton actually makes this recipe, only for the Chum Bucket to blow up as a result. Plankton never passes up an opportunity opportunity to try to steal the secret formula. And we can clearly see this again in the episode It Came from Goo Lagoon. This time, it was a giant purple goo ball that spouted out of a volcanic crack in the bottom of the lagoon. Sandy tries to explain to SpongeBob, Patrick, Squidward, and the Bikini Bottomites, and Plankton that the bubbles are made of highly toxic super goo that are safe when stable, but it is in their nature to be very unstable, and if popped, they can coat a large portion of Bikini Bottom in purple goo. Plankton hears this and unveils a multi-purpose shit, which he uses to find the crack where the bubbles are produced, and make a bubble large enough to cover the entire city. He succeeds in his quest, widening the big crack enough for such a bubble. Even though SpongeBob, Sandy, and Patrick try their best to catch Plankton, they fail and he destroys Sandy's submarine. To rub salt on the wound, SpongeBob attempts to send the bubble away, via creating a massive bubble bruiser. The attempt, however, backfires and allows Plankton to demand the formula. Krabs must fulfill this, or Plankton will pop the bubble. He gets his way, but on receiving the formula, he pops the bubble anyway, causing the entire city to get covered in purple goo. Plankton gets away and proceeds to read the formula on his ship. It reads just one ingredient. He quickly realizes that the formula is fake, and when he pulls down the paper, it reveals a stick of dynamite. The dynamite stick explodes, causing his ship to crash into the roof of the chum bucket. Plankton rarely works together with other people, but in the episode Captain Pipsqueak, he leads a team of villains and has better success than usual. The episode begins at the chum bucket, where Plankton yet again fails to steal the secret formula. He later watches TV and gets the idea to join the League of Evil. Plankton then goes and finds their secret lair, which happens to be accessible by going through a dumpster. Once there are many waiting to join the force in a subtle way. They try out, but fail to enter the room. Plankton says he, for all intents and purposes, really wants to steal the formula for world domination. He goes on to commit acts of evil to gain their trust and succeeds. This causes them to rally behind him, believing they can dominate the world too if they were on Plankton's team. They ambush the Krusty Krab together, catching everyone off guard. Dirty Bubble, one of the villains, traps SpongeBob, Squidward, and Mr. Krabs as a distraction. Plankton steals the formula, but Man Ray finds out the formula is just a recipe for a sandwich. They get disappointed, give the formula back to Mr. Krabs, and kick Plankton out of the force. Even one of the villains got to know what the formula is after trying in just one episode. Poor Plankton has been trying to do that for decades. Speaking of Plankton using others to steal the formula, let's go to a time where he used his own pet to carry out his plan. It was in the episode Spot Returns. Plankton and Karen realize that their pet Spot is pregnant. Karen explains to him that the food-rich environments, such as the one Plankton provided Spot, causes amoeba to reproduce. Plankton then starts panicking, while Spot is generating other amoebas. The amoebas destroy various things in the lab, leading Plankton to attempt to get rid of them. He takes SpongeBob's help to sell the puppies to various citizens of Bikini Bottom, but the puppies steal items from their owner and return it to Plankton, who immediately gets an idea. He's about to start training them, but Karen is still rebooting, and Plankton finds it difficult to do that alone, before calling SpongeBob to train his pets. As soon as the training starts, SpongeBob shows him how to do innocent things, such as sitting and barking. All the while, Plankton teaches them how to do other things for evil purposes, such as opening a door and catching a grenade. After hours of training, Plankton introduces SpongeBob to the puppies: the Demolition Puppy, the Acrobat Puppy, the Identical Twin Puppies, and the Comedic Relief Puppy. SpongeBob realizes the plan, but is quickly trapped, while Plankton tries to open the bottle with the secret formula. SpongeBob uses the puppies to escape and takes back the formula, foiling another one of Plankton's plans. But of course, that wasn't the only time he tried to use his own family, as the episode Plankton's Army proves. This episode takes place on the 25th anniversary of Plankton trying to steal the formula. Plankton tries again with a robot and a dollar, and as usual, he is stopped by Mr. Krabs. He sadly returns to the chum bucket, and Karen Aaron suggests hiring some henchmen to help him out with his army, and after failing to recruit some thugs at a nightclub, Plankton remembers that he has thousands of relatives across the sea. Imagining them all to be evil geniuses like he is, he invites them all to the chum bucket. However, when they arrive, he sees that they are all dim-witted hillbillies, and realizes that he's been away from home longer than he thought, but he goes with the plan anyway, with the promise of root beer as a reward. After trapping Mr. Krabs and Squidward in a toilet, they open the safe containing the Krabby Patty secret formula. Plankton takes it out of the safe, and Mr. Krabs begs him not to read it, telling him that there are some things in this world that aren't meant for mortal eyes. Plankton didn't care to listen, and reads out the formula with 4 ingredients: a pinch of salt, 3 teaspoons of chopped onion, a cup of love, and finally, 4 heaping pounds of freshly ground plankton. This understandably horrifies Plankton, who runs away with his relatives following him. Turns out, Krabs once again saw this coming, and decided to switch the formula for a fake one. Plankton does, however, figure this out though, causing him to try again in the rest of the seasons. The next one on my list actually costs Mr. Krabs his formula, and Plankton does bring it back to the chum bucket in an interesting way. In the episode, Question is Buried in Time, Krabs gets the idea to start a time capsule. Multiple people contribute to this idea, with the last item being a copy of the secret formula. Naturally, this gets Plankton interested in this, and he hatches a plan to get the bottle inside. Plankton drills the capsule and gets the formula, but he gets caught in a misunderstanding involving Squidward, who steps on him on his way. This causes Plankton to swallow the bottle, giving him a bottle-shaped figure. The episode ends with Plankton on the toilet, trying to get it out of him. It's implied that he does get it out, but by then, the formula is so damaged, it's unreadable. That wasn't the only time Plankton swallowed the formula though, as he actually eats a Krabby Patty in the episode For Here or To Go. It starts with Mr. Krabs having an important announcement. It's the first annual bun seed counting contest. For anyone who correctly guesses how many seeds there are in the sesame seed jar, wins a free Krabby Patty. Several people make guesses, each more ridiculous than the last. The next contestant is Plankton, but before he can guess, Mr. Krabs grabs him by the antenna and takes him outside. Plankton claims it's unfair, and calls the bogus business bureau on him. Agents burst through the roof, along with Agent Twerp, who tells Mr. Krabs that he must accept the guesses from all customers, no matter how annoying they are. Mr. Krabs, though, is adamant about refusing to let him guess, but when Twerp threatens to close down the Krusty Krab, he reluctantly agrees. Plankton uses technology to scan the jar, and guesses 500,301. His answer turns out to be correct, and he wins the Krabby Patty. Krabs tries to stall, and tries not to give it to Plankton, knowing that he will reverse engineer it, but he is forced to give it to him in the end. When the Krabby Patty is ready, Plankton wants it to go, but Mr. Krabs says that it must be dine in. Plankton stuffs the entire patty into his mouth, but Mr. Krabs tells him to swallow. Once he does, he's kicked out by Mr. Krabs into the chum bucket. Once home, Plankton climbs onto an operating table and tells Karen to remove the patty from his stomach right away, even declining anesthesia. Later, Mr. Krabs and SpongeBob sadly watch the long line at the chum bucket. Suddenly, people rush out. Sick from patties, they say taste like stomach acid, aspirin, and carrots. The rest of the customers flee, and Plankton asks Karen what's going on. She tells him she followed orders, revealing that she focused on his stomach contents rather than the Krabby Patty ingredients. This error was the only thing between Plankton and his beloved formula. But did you know there was a time when Plankton made an entire band to steal the formula? In the episode Krabby Road. It starts with Plankton escaping jail and returning to the chum bucket, but he's also thrown out by Karen, who calls him a loser for never succeeding in his one mission. Plankton then hears SpongeBob singing about a Krabby Patty while censoring out the ingredients with noises. Plankton asks him to sing it uncensored, but SpongeBob mistakes this as Plankton wanting him to join the band, but he rolls with it in hopes of stealing the formula. The band also gets Patrick and Squidward as members. Plankton returns with band shirts, naming their band Plankton and the Patty Stealers. Despite this, they are still oblivious to Plankton's true intentions. The band's dreams come true when Mr. Krabs lets them play at the Krusty Krab after hours. Plankton immediately starts searching for the formula, while the rest of his band rehearses. SpongeBob notices this and soon realizes that the band was just another one of Plankton's crazy schemes and becomes furious. Plankton actually opens the the formula, but isn't able to read it for himself as he tries to prove his innocence. The police come and arrest Plankton for his escape, but perhaps one of Plankton's best ideas was to impersonate Sandy. In the episode, someone's in the kitchen with Sandy. Plankton tries to steal the patty served to Sandy at the start of the episode, and it leads to him getting an idea. Later, when Sandy returns to her tree dome, she goes in the bathroom, taking off her fur coat. Sandy is almost completely bald and pink at this point, but this doesn't faze Plankton. He steals the fur coat, puts it on, and goes to the Krusty Krab. SpongeBob is happy to see Sandy again, even believing Plankton's lies about why Sandy doesn't wear her suit anymore. Plankton leverages the situation, and he asks SpongeBob for Krabby Patty tips or information. After some short tips from SpongeBob, Mr. Krabs walks in through the door at the corner of the kitchen and declares that he is leaving the formula out in plain sight by setting it on a table. Plankton cheers happily in Sandy's fur coat, since stealing the formula is now much easier. But he is stalled by SpongeBob giving him an irritating lesson, where he has to put a bun on the exact same spot of the patty, but he is always off by a random amount. He gives up, steals the formula, and tries to escape. The real Sandy, though, enters the Krusty Krab and stops him in the nick of time. Unfortunately for Plankton, not even this idea worked out. This list would not be complete without talking about the time that Plankton switched lives with Mr. Krabs in the episode The Algae's Always Greener. After failing to steal the Krabby Patty secret formula once again, Plankton decides that he is tired of eating holographic meatloaf, believing Mr. Krabs to have more of a satisfying existence. He longs to switch lives with him. Karen conveniently points out that he had just invented a transmogridifier earlier and suggests to use it. Plankton takes her advice and later finds himself waking up as Mr. Krabs. Now, wearing Mr. Krabs' outfit, Plankton looks at his nameplate reading Mr. Plankton and realizes that he has successfully entered a universe where he is, in fact, successful. His first act is to have alternate universe SpongeBob SquarePants, now as his employee, present him with 2 Krabby Patties for bun inspection. He also switches the jobs of SpongeBob and Squidward, with SpongeBob becoming the cashier and Squidward becoming the fry cook. What he doesn't realize, however, is that Mr. Krabs is a completely different person in this universe, having life circumstances closer to those that Plankton had at the beginning of the episode. He is now simply known as Krabs. He's out to steal the formula, and much like Plankton used to, he's completely naked. The crew stops Krabs, but in the process of living as the new owner, Plankton realized that he hated it, and then he hits a button, making everything go back to normal. Too bad he didn't take the formula with him though. Womp womp. But even that pales in comparison to the time SpongeBob and Squidward throw out the formula in the episode Bottle Burglars. The episode begins with SpongeBob and Squidward cleaning Mr. Krabs' office, with Mr. Krabs telling them to watch over the formula. Meanwhile, Plankton is using an invisibility helmet to steal the formula, and ends up actually stealing it when Squidward accidentally throws it out with trash. SpongeBob and Squidward then look at the security footage to see what happened, and see that Plankton had indeed stole it. They devise a plan to steal the formula back. While Plankton fails to open the formula due to there being a 12-hour time lock on it, SpongeBob and Squidward go inside the chum bucket right when Plankton finishes watching his show and goes to bed. After SpongeBob makes sure that Plankton is asleep, they face many obstacles before eventually reaching the safe. However, when SpongeBob steps on a tile, he activates a trap which hurts Squidward. When they finally reach the safe, SpongeBob tries to take it, but this causes a rocket to take SpongeBob and Squidward and blast them out of the restaurant. Mr. Krabs comes back to the Krusty Krab, where SpongeBob and Squidward tell him that Plankton stole the formula. He gets very mad, but ends up stealing the formula back very easily by punching a hole through the safe outside the restaurant. Somehow, for all of his science knowledge, Plankton is never able to outsmart his mortal enemy. Perhaps he will be able to outsmart a baby version of Krabs though. Well, he certainly tries in the episode Goo Goo Gas. In here, Plankton gets the idea to turn Mr. Krabs into a baby when he hears a woman saying that she can take her baby's milk away from him and he can't do anything about it. Plankton then leads Mr. Krabs to a telephone booth, find money, where he sprays Goo Goo Gas on him, turning Mr. Krabs into a baby. SpongeBob finds baby Krabs and takes him away, but Plankton accidentally reveals to an overhearing SpongeBob that baby Krabs is actually Mr. Krabs. SpongeBob tries to take care of baby Krabs and only succeeds when he uses a stack of 20s. Meanwhile, Meanwhile, Plankton sprays baby crabs in SpongeBob, but Mr. Krabs is now an adult, and SpongeBob is a baby. Plankton sprays SpongeBob again, and now he's back to an adult. He realizes that he's using senior citizen spray. Plankton sprays everyone again, thinking that they'll now be too old to catch him. Once he steals a Krabby Patty, SpongeBob and Mr. Krabs pursue him slowly, but then trap him by knitting a net and calling over senior citizens to hit him one by one like a piñata. Plankton then realizes that there is one ingredient that he's missing to turn people into babies. He goes to the bargain mart where he buys baby powder and then goes back to complete the experiment. Using Karen as a test subject, he gets it to work. He then returns to the Krusty Krab and sprays all over the customers, including SpongeBob, Squidward, and Mr. Krabs, and they all remain stuck as babies for the rest of the episode. Plankton is grabbed and thrown around by the babies, but sees the formula sucked on by baby crabs. As he's about to get it though, baby crabs repeatedly slams the bottle on Plankton, who then comes back from underneath and realizes that he just got the formula. Just as he was about to make his getaway, he realizes that baby SpongeBob had gotten ahead of his canister. The baby pulls the trigger, spraying Plankton, who now became so small he can't even be seen without a microscope. Turns out, he can't even win when everyone around him is a baby. As if switching lives wasn't enough, there is a time where Plankton made a Krabs robot in the episode Imitation Krabs. At the Krusty Krab, Plankton disguises himself as a robot salesman to get the Krabby Patty secret formula, presenting SpongeBob with an offer of $1 million if he reveals it. SpongeBob explains in no uncertain terms that the formula is property of Mr. Krabs and can only be shared with him.
Yes!
The Krabby Patty formula is the sole property of the Krusty Krab and is only to be discussed in part or in whole with its creator, Mr. Krabs. Duplication of this formula is punishable by law. Restrictions apply. Results may vary.
Enraged, Plankton bursts out of the robot and threatens SpongeBob with violence, only to be caught by Mr. Krabs and thrown out. This, of course, gives him another idea. He gets to work, making a Krabs robot that looks just like him. But when Plankton tests it out, it fails to fool Squidward. But he bribes Squidward into being silent. He then tries to get information out of SpongeBob. What follows is a ritual that goes on for 6.5 hours and consists of many bizarre and ridiculous feats, leaving Plankton worn out from the controlling robot crabs. After all of this, SpongeBob still won't discuss formula, causing Plankton to explode in anger at all the things that he did, seemingly for nothing. However, SpongeBob explains that it simply must not be discussed out loud, and he holds up a bottle containing the formula in written form. But as he reaches out for the bottle, the real Mr. Krabs appears, and he gets in an argument with robot crabs, and the two try to convince SpongeBob that they are a genuine owner. Unable to handle the situation calmly, SpongeBob threatens both of them with a vat of tartar sauce until he gets some answers. He decides that the best way to weed out the imposter is to present the two with a quiz about the Krusty Krab. The first two questions are generic ones that anyone who has been to a restaurant could answer, and Robot Krabs answers them both correctly. The third and final question is one so complicated that not even the real Mr. Krabs can answer it, which causes SpongeBob to blast him with tartar sauce and rolls him out the door in a fry basket, convinced he's the imposter. Believing Robot Krabs to be the real Mr. Krabs, SpongeBob presents him with the formula, as Plankton laughs in victory. But then SpongeBob somehow destroys Robot Krabs by dropping a penny into its coin-operated self-destruct mechanism. With only 10 seconds until its detonation, he rushes to the chum bucket, but unfortunately, he's too late and it explodes before he even gets a chance to read the formula. As we get closer to the #1 spot, allow me to briefly talk about one other time where Plankton came closest to the formula. The episode Frozen Face Off is where everyone in Bikini Bottom participates in a warm sled race to win $1 million. But Plankton uses the distraction to go after the Krabby Patty secret formula. He sneaks off to the Krusty Krab just before the race begins and uses a robot as his replacement in the race. When the group returns after an eventful race, they find that the Krusty Krab has been destroyed and Plankton has stolen the formula. formula. However, Plankton cannot get the bottle open. When Plankton expresses his frustration of not being able to open the bottle, Patrick stupidly opens the bottle, allowing Plankton to finally take the formula out. After everyone surrounds Plankton, he pretends to surrender and uses a pen to fly away out of the chum bucket. The group chases Plankton into a net trap that Plankton trapped them in above a grease pit, but he did not know about the snow mollusk that had been a part of the race. It frees the group and starts eating Patrick's jelly beans. Plankton tries to escape, but the snow mollusk mistakes him for a jelly bean and eats him, dropping the secret formula. At the end, the formula is returned by Mr. Krabs in the process, with Karen showing no sympathy for Plankton. At the end of this list, for the last time that Plankton stole the secret formula, is none other than the legendary SpongeBob SquarePants movie. In it, Plankton initiates what he calls Plan Z in order to attempt to finally obtain the Krabby Patty secret formula. He steals King Neptune's crown, sends it into Shell City, and frames Krabs for the crimes. Neptune confronts Krabs about his stolen crown and is convinced of Krabs' guilt when a hungover SpongeBob smears him. Recovering from his hangover, SpongeBob promises Neptune that he will retrieve the crown from Shell City. Neptune freezes Krabs, telling SpongeBob to return it in 6 days or his boss will be executed. After the duo leave Bikini Bottom, Plankton actually steals the formula from the frozen crabs and uses it to start selling Krabby Patties. He distributes free helmets with the Krabby Patties that brainwash customers into doing Plankton's bidding. It leads to him taking over Bikini Bottom and hiring a hitman named Dennis to prevent SpongeBob and Patrick from returning the crown. We finally see Plankton achieve all of his dreams, but the story isn't over yet. Neptune arrives to execute Krabs, but SpongeBob and Patrick return with the crown just in time. Plankton drops a mind control helmet on Neptune and surrounds SpongeBob, Patrick, and Mindy with his army of slaves. But SpongeBob uses the Goofy Goober rock to free Neptune and the citizens of Bikini Bottom. As Plankton is arrested by the police, Neptune unfreezes Krabs, who appoints SpongeBob as the manager of Krusty Krab 2. That was every time that Plankton stole the secret formula. If you liked the video, make sure to smash the subscribe button for more.